to stay.
Hello and welcome back to Beyond Boards, a podcast dedicated to the actions and interests of skaters beyond skateboarding. My guest today, Ben Koppl, grew up in Morro Bay, California, where he started skating in the early 2000s. At the age of 17, attracted to the Pacific Northwest, he decided to move up to Seattle, Washington, where he studied linguistics, literature, and Spanish. In the following years, Ben traveled all around Europe and Japan, among other exciting places. Through these travels, he developed an amazingly creative and unique way of skating, which makes him stand out strongly in an increasingly standardized global skateboarding landscape. After working for Seattle public schools for a few years, he and his wife Zoe moved down to Oakland, California in 2024 for him to start grad school at Cal State East Bay for Speech and Language Pathology, so he can become a speech therapist. So here's my conversation with Ben. I hope you'll enjoy it. Before I share the first friends questions for you, I wanted to ask you to tell me and the listeners kind of how you started skating, how skating entered your life. From what I could find, you grew up in Morro Bay, I think, in California. But yeah, could you just take me through, kind of finding skateboarding and how it entered your life?
Yeah, so I grew up in a town where skateboarding and surfing are really, at least in the early 2000s, late 90s, were super popular. And so Morro Bay, it was a place you were going to see skateboarding, you were going to see surfing. So it was probably 2000 or 1999. I would have been 7 or 8 years old. They hosted the Slalom World Championships 2 blocks from my house where I grew up, which in a town of 10,000 was a huge event for us.
For sure.
And I remember going, and it was, it was a lot of German nerds with super tuned downhill setups. It didn't look very cool to me as even an 8-year-old kid. But, my dad was, he had skateboarded back in the day. And so he was like, we should sit and watch. This is really cool. And his friend Jack Smith, who was the first guy to skate across the US, who also lives in my hometown, put it on every year with obviously a lot of help. But so with that, he was kind of pointing out oh, that's Skitch Hitchcock, that's whoever. And that's when the giant slalom event began, which is where they space the cones really wide and people go fast.
Yep.
And I remember that being a lot more interesting. But at some point, there was this guy, and he came through the course, and at the very top, he missed the cone. And he hit the cone, it flies away, and he's botched his run. It's over.
Oh shit!
And he just started straight lining through all the cones and knocking them down. Super rude. Definitely not what you want to do.
Yeah.
And it was Dwayne Peters, and I just remember him looking so cool to me as a kid, as an 8-year-old, and just knowing all right, whatever happens, that looks like something I want to try, and that looks like something I want to do.
Wow.
So I was just
what
super
an initiation.
stoked.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, and it really captured a rebellious energy that I think, growing up in a pretty a small rural town, you wouldn't really see anything like that or that attitude. And he had crazy tattoos. I mean, he looked like an action movie star that I would be stoked on at the time. So
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so I got my first skateboard for my 9th birthday, which was a few months after that. And then pretty much would go to the skate park every day.
Okay. Did you have a skate park nearby that you could skate to, or did you have your parents drop you out there? Or?
So Morro Bay is a really small town, and there was a skate park. It was down by the beach, which was a really cool place for it to be. I mean, a really great place to hang out. And as much as Dwayne Peters was the first person I saw skateboard that I thought that looks really cool, I want to do that. Going to the Morro Bay skate park, it was a typical California skate park of the era in that it had a pad monitor that made you wear a helmet and you had to pay $1 to skate.
Okay.
Which came after a bunch of sort of liability lawsuits, made a lot of towns scared to have a skate park in them.
Sure.
And so, but the pad monitors, whatever, the skate park monitors all were really cool older guys who had who were playing Operation Ivy or Sonic Youth and music you, again, wouldn't hear on the radio at the time. And it was really a place where skateboarding culture was accessible in a way that it would never have been normally. And it was within walking distance of my house. So that was awesome.
I bet, yeah. And you mentioned earlier that your dad had skated in the past. So did he kind of share that a little bit with you, or prior to that slalom contest thing, you had not really been confronted with skateboarding?
No, I didn't really, like, he didn't talk about his skateboarding past. He was just, he had done a lot of like downhill, along with a lot of people of his generation. Mm-hmm. Was he a skater? Not really. He also would ride motorcycles or, you know, do a lot of other stuff that was just sort of like, you know, underground culture of the time. So it wasn't like a main focus for him. And then he fell going down a pretty gnarly hill near my house. And that was like, he said, basically, I'm hanging it up. That's it for me.
Okay.
But I was shocked when I started skating and he like knew how to push around and had pretty good style. And I was like, whoa, okay.
That's cool. Yeah. And so you said you were confronted with like kind of skate culture, like music and stuff like that early on. And what about like videos? Because I think in one of those interviews you mentioned, you said that, I thought it was funny that you said Animal Chin and one of the Day One versus...
Yeah, Ronnie versus Day One.
Right. Like these were among the first videos you saw, but were these the actual two first videos you watched, or was there something prior to that, or...
No, that was pretty much the start of it. And I think that for me, you know, if you combine those two videos, you pretty much get the skating I do now in a lot of ways.
Kind of, yeah.
At some level. And so I guess I didn't deviate much from where I started. But the way I got videos as a kid was that my dad was an antiques dealer. So he would go to yard sales and pick stuff up. And being in a really small town, it wasn't like now where there's YouTube and like Thrasher has a website that you could get on as a kid. This is like 1999, 2000. So I had no idea that those two things were coming from really different eras. Like if you think about music, if there's like 80s music, 90s music, 60s, like as a kid, you don't really know that. You're just like, oh, this is all old or it's all new or whatever. So I like had a sort of obliviousness to the different eras that I was consuming as though they were contemporary to one another. I mean, other early videos would have been like Logic Video Magazine, or I had a bunch of like old 411s, like the early 90s ones. I had H Street videos, and I just kind of took it in as though it was all what was happening now.
Okay, like you weren't really conscious of that was 10 years ago, that was 15 years ago or something. It was kind of all, didn't matter what time frame that was from.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't like an oblivious kid, but it wasn't a time where you could go fact check, like, oh, there's not still kids skating jump ramps in a cul-de-sac in Bakersfield doing method grabs, you know?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so let me share with you the first surprise question that I got from your brother, Chris.
Oh, awesome.
His first question is, we grew up in a pretty interesting time that was basically pre-internet and pre-smartphone, where VHS tapes and print magazines were the primary skateboarding media. How did that impact your relationship with the sport? And is the instant gratification and convenience of today's media a pro or a con?
Wow, that's a really long question.
Yeah.
You know, I think I'm going to approach the last point first, because we've been talking a little bit about, you know, growing up with my own experience of mixing media eras and that, and so not to be on the same topic. I think it's really interesting to look at how skateboard media of a given moment determines like who is pro or what skateboarding culture looks like. Like whether I like it or not, I came at a really convenient time for my own like skateboarding to be consumed, because if you gave me 2 years to film a 2-minute video part like in the Baker videos, it would just be really long. I can't like tray flip a 15 stair and get hurt and then do it again. But I could put out a minute of footage every 2 days for 5 years, and it would, you know, I'm pretty consistent. I hit a like honest medium most of the time, and I am fortunate in being able to not get injured too much the way that I skateboard. So, you know, do I love the social media internet? No, I currently don't use a smartphone. I'm not like using Instagram at all.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But in 2014, like as much as what I grew up on was video parts, and that's what I ever aspired to make, I thought that there was something really cool about the kind of democratizing experience of social media, where it felt like a zine that you could just make. Everyone has the tools to do it. It's incredibly cheap. And so the first things I did with it were like I remember after I lived in Japan, I took the train across Russia, and I was just like selfie filming in like rural Siberia. And it was cool that I didn't need to bring a filmer. I didn't need to have an editor. There was no media to put it out. It's just like direct from whoever's doing it to whoever is watching it.
Yeah.
And there's something a little bit punk rock about that. But you then also have to deal with these like super evil media corporations and the effect of scrolling on phones all the time on society. So
yeah,
I have a lot of nostalgia for the media landscape that I grew up in.
Yeah.
I still pretty much want to watch full-length videos. I like print magazines. I still try to put all my best stuff in video parts. But I understand also that if I had started out in that era, I don't think what I ever did with skateboarding would translate, because I was just going as far as I could, like physically in space, and doing these crazy trips, and you were never going to convince a filmer or a company to be a part of that experience. And so it gave me an opportunity to share a first person view of that, which was pretty cool.
And you just mentioned at the beginning that you're no longer using Instagram, but I mean we've been communicating over Instagram, so I assume you still have access to it. But I assume you mean you don't use it regularly. You're not posting every day. You're not like what is your relationship with Instagram these days?
So I may have misspoken. What I meant to say, if it wasn't what I said, is that I'm not using a smartphone.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that's a difference. Like I still have Instagram. I usually access it through a desktop computer. And I just hit a point where I noticed that, and really I work with children in education.
Yep.
And, emergingly with like older adults as a speech and language pathology graduate student. And, I realized that one of the reasons that we couldn't get kids not to be on smartphones is that their parents and teachers are all using them.
Yeah.
And knowing how harmful they are to kids, it was just like, I don't know, how can I say that people shouldn't do this? And I mean, they can do whatever they want. It's not the worst thing in the world, but I realized that it didn't look cool to me. Like if I'm on the train and I see someone on their phone, I don't think that looks cool. I think they're kind of hunched over and,
yeah,
it's pretty antisocial. At some point, we're going to look back on this period of history and be like, what were we all doing?
We were all hooked on these useless devices and apps and everything. Yeah.
So I just, I was like in a position where I could take the initiative to not use it, and it doesn't come with me. I still can be on it, but when I'm out like at the cafe, if I'm not on Instagram, what am I doing? Like I'm looking at birds, I'm talking to people, I'm reading a book.
You're present. Yeah.
Yeah, which isn't like some like elite thing, like, oh, everybody else is like, but it's nice, I really actually feel better not using it. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, but I couldn't do it. And it's like, well, why not? Because I grew up way before any of this stuff ever existed.
Yeah.
There was no Maps app. Like you just had to know where to go. And I mean, I have a device that has a basic map on it. Like I can get around. So yeah, I don't know. I don't need to be on it all the time also to be active. So I have an iPhone that I use to film, but right now I'm recovering from ACL surgery. So like it doesn't come with me much.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. When I come back from this injury, I don't know exactly what my relationship with social media is going to be. I'm pretty sure it's not what it was for a super long time before this. But yeah, I mean, I'm still going to make skate videos with my friends because that's like my favorite thing to do pretty much. So
yeah. No, and you can keep doing that, and you can probably figure out a way to do it without using a phone 24/7 like everybody else is doing. You'll see how it all evolves once you get back into filming mode and everything.
Yeah, 9 hours of screen time a day also wasn't helping me make skate videos,
Yeah. I'll show you Chris's second question. He said, as a family, we traveled quite a bit when we were young, and you continue to travel extensively to this day. What has been the most influential trip you have taken, and how has traveling helped to shape your values?
Man, these are some hard-hitting questions from Chris. Thanks for that. I think that and I kind of anticipated getting asked something like this, so I've been thinking about it a lot, and I guess I'm lucky in the sense that I could think of a lot of trips that would meet that criteria for me. But I think, and it's not necessarily a travel experience, but the trip that I went on that changed my life the most is probably when I lived in Japan. I would guess it was maybe 2013, 2014, but I had graduated from university into a pretty lousy economy and wasn't really figuring out what to do with my life. I had always skateboarded, but I definitely wasn't in a position where I was like, I ever have any future in this. You know, I wasn't the most talented kid, even of my small town group of skater friends. Mm-hmm. The most obsessive for sure, but not the best. And so that was not something I was thinking about doing professionally at any level. But I really hit a point where I felt really directionless, and I had the idea that I could go teach English in Japan. And because I'd been super influenced by Japanese skateboarding.
Yeah, Far East Skate Network videos, among others, I assume.
Yeah, Overground was a huge influence for me. And then also like Chopper and the Osaka Daggers were really doing something with skateboarding that like piqued my interest as a kid who grew up on like VHS of 80s street style contests. Mm-hmm. And really enjoyed like the kind of what I'm going to call like the credits tricks of skate videos. Like, you know, in Manic Mahdi, there's like a bunch of really wacky things that didn't make the cut in the credits, like the tail slide, tail slide, or it's nose, tail, nose, nollie heel, whatever.
Yeah.
Or like Bob Brinquist doing the channel on like a micro board.
Oh, yeah.
Little stuff like that would really stick out to me, and I liked all that. So seeing the Osaka Daggers, I was like, this is sick. I definitely want to go hang out with those dudes. Uh-huh. And so I applied for a job and got a call back. I, studied languages, so I was a good candidate. And
did you speak Japanese at all, or did you?
Not a word of it.
Okay.
I was like the weirdest candidate to be an English teacher in Japan, in the sense that everyone else who did it, which I found out by going there, does it because they love anime.
Yeah, it makes sense, yeah.
So all my Japanese fellow all the teachers at the school are like, oh yeah, new English teacher, sick. What's your favorite anime? And I was like, I don't know
what you're talking about. Yeah.
I've never really seen that. And they're like, dude, why are you here? And it's like skateboarding, which now you have Yuto Horigome or Sora Shirai and these sort of celebrity level Japanese skaters. But at the time, especially living in rural Japan, they're like, what are you doing? That answer was such a non sequitur to everyone who encountered it that I'm amazed they just didn't think I was insane and tell me to go home. But that was a really amazing era in my life where it was the first time I really got to put energy into skateboarding specifically, and then get something back in terms of just being able to, find and meet these people that I saw in videos that were so unattainably cool to me at the time. And then it's wait, you can just go there, and they're there and they want to hang out and do stuff, which was really cool. So
you got to meet with all these guys, like the Osaka Daggers, like Takahiro Morita, Gumiyagi. Did you get to hang out with kind of all these people?
Yeah, Go I only met one time, but and that was thanks to Chopper and at the end of my stay. But yeah, every one of them was just around, or I remember meeting Louis Araki or Koichiro Uehara, who are both amazing skaters. Koichiro had just had Lens 2 come out pretty recently, so he was pretty fresh in everyone's mind. It was they're just there. Mm-hmm. You go to Triangle Park at the time, Chopper was there every night, Doll was there all the time. And Japan has this amazing network of skate shops and filmers. Their media landscape is super integrated. And so because I was really good friends with the guys at Local Boys Skate Shop in Okayama, where I lived, which is not a city famous for skateboarding. It's famous for having a pretty brutal local police force that's pretty oppressive to skateboarding. Those guys, and specifically Yuki Omori, who's this really, really talented skater and filmer from there, who was in underground broadcasting and stuff. Mm-hmm. Behind the scenes was making connections for me left and right, that at the time I was this is crazy, that just happened. And it's yeah, well, thanks, Yuki. Now I know enough to know that it didn't happen completely by coincidence, but because people really wanted to make something work for me, which was really awesome because, I was just some random kid from California skating a huge shaped board and doing really weird tricks, weirder than I do now, I guess. Uh-huh. And it was super fun, and just a whole world opened up to me in a moment where nothing was the same after that for me.
Okay, yeah. So it's really, and so you were there for a year, more or less?
A little bit less than that. What ended up happening is So before I went to Japan, I spent a summer and got to know this girl, Zoe, who,
became your wife?
For example, only like 11 years later. And we hit it off and just had an amazing summer fling that was never really meant to go anywhere. And then at the end of the summer, we decided, we have something special. Let's try to keep it going long distance. And so at the end of my time in Japan, it was like, all right, well, I don't know what my life is going to look like. I'm at this time like 20, 21 years old. I guess 21, but definitely I'm going to go do whatever she's doing. Mm-hmm. And she was going to school in New York, so there was like no reason that our paths would converge but through brute force. So I ended up finishing my job in Japan, and instead of renewing, I took the train across Russia and then went to Helsinki, Turkey, like Istanbul, and then ended up in Barcelona where I met the spotter guys, who were also super influential, I guess, in sort of my early skateboarding experience. Stayed with them and then went to New York and met up with Zoe, and, kind of the rest is history. But So, I don't know if that relationship wasn't there, I think I would have stayed in Japan and ended up trying to become some sort of skateboard industry figure like Lawrence, something like that.
I was gonna say that because when you said you went there to become a teacher, I remember I interviewed him a little while back, maybe a couple of years ago at this point, and he told me that I think he initially went to Japan and was an English teacher for not for very long, I think just maybe a year or two, or maybe a little bit more than that, but and eventually made connections and ended up where he's at now, but yeah, it's interesting that you guys kind of had a similar kind of beginning over there in Japan. Mm-hmm. But and did you ever think about going back, like, or is it maybe still on the table, like maybe in the future? You never know.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to visit really frequently. I think the thing that kind of came up for me was that ultimately, and also like Zoe wouldn't want to live there for a long time. I mean, we could do like, she's a landscape architect, so she could work for a firm or something for a while, but it's a lot easier to access Japanese culture as a skateboarder than as any other kind of person on earth, I think. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of skateboarders speak English. A lot of skateboarders don't mind if you don't speak Japanese. And they tend to be pretty like out of the box, big personality characters that aren't too afraid of difference. Uh-huh. And so, it's a lot easier for me to go to these like places around the world and immediately have friends. Yeah. But also, like, in my entire time being an English teacher, I remember, because you don't really have that much time off and you don't really have that much money. Like, I had fewer days off in my year as an English teacher than I did my first 6-week trip in Japan, cumulatively. Like, if you went back to back to back, it's like weekend. It doesn't add up to much. And so with my work schedule being as it was, at least for the last decade, it was just easier for me to block time and say, I'm going to Japan for 2 months and I'll see everybody and have a really good time, but be able to, make my money at home and live pretty good, so.
Yeah. No, for sure. It makes sense to do it that way. And you can still experience and enjoy Japan whenever you go there, and you don't have to live there all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting now, though, with the tourism boom. I wonder how it's going to like change and become different. And I think especially like when I came to Japan, it was this really special period where it felt like there was cultural exchange between Japan and the rest of the world, but not much in terms of the skate scene. Mm-hmm. It was way more isolate. And so in that isolation, it had sort of like kind of gone a little Galapagos Islands. Like it became really diverse and really interesting and really dense. Mm. And there wasn't really competitive skateboarding to break up that ecosystem. So, at the time, there were a lot of Japanese kids who just like got into skateboarding because they were kind of like outsiders or weird or had some connection to it. And then they would like look up to whoever was like amazing in Japanese skating at the time and want to be like that. They would learn about it through their local shop that would give them local magazines. And at some point with the internet and social media, like there's been this huge homogenizing effect for the world's skate scenes, mm-hmm. where everyone has access to the same media and tends to develop the same aesthetics. So like I can find sort of the same exact guy in like Lyon as I can find in Tokyo, as I can find in for sure like Sao Paulo or wherever. Yeah. And definitely that guy's in London,
Yeah. That's true. There's a standardization kind of skateboard practices or just that's very true.
Well, and every video looks the same wherever it's from, and at the time it was just different where Japanese videos looked like nothing you'd ever seen before.
For sure.
The skaters had their own entire like aesthetic that no one else was doing in terms of fashion and trick choice. And you could see the skating had really evolved in relationship to the terrain, which was then also super architecturally unique. And now you have like, you know, Japanese kids hucking 16-stair tray flips in a metro station, and it looks like a GX video, but for the background being maybe cooler or different. And it's cool. I'm not like a grouchy old guy who just thinks that now sucks. Like there's a lot of things that are really cool happening these days.
Still, yeah. But no, I completely agree. There's definitely a standardization of skating worldwide, and it doesn't feel as specific to a certain scene or city or country or culture. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it made it a great time to travel then and skate. Everywhere felt so different.
Mm-hmm. I'll move to the next question afterwards, but I wanted to ask you, you just said that after Japan, you took the train all across Russia. So did you take it does it leave from Vladivostok or something like that, towards the east?
Yeah, so I started in Vladivostok and went through, you know, inner Siberia through Lake Baikal, which was like one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in my life. And then kept going west and west and west to Moscow, and then took a spur up to St. Petersburg and then to Helsinki.
Wow.
So if you never got off the train, it would have been 11 days of pure 24-hour continuous movement.
Oh my God.
It's the, you know, longest single rail line in the world. And it was an amazing experience, you know. If I could go back, I would go again for sure. And, you know, with the friends I made at the time and the connections I would now have, like it would be a really different experience than just going in completely or mostly blind. But I think there's this impression that, like, you know, people have of Russian people is that their government represents them, which is an interesting illusion for a society we acknowledge not to be particularly democratic. And as an American, you know, it's like, I really hope that my government doesn't completely represent me or my neighbors or the people that I know, because I would feel very similarly in reverse about that issue. So as much as I want people to look at me and think, oh, that's an American guy, but maybe he's actually cool, like, I met a lot of Russian people who are really cool and who aren't down with what's going on. And the skaters there were awesome. And, you know, I'd meet one skater in Vladivostok and they'd be like, oh, you're going to like Ulan-Ude. Like we have one friend there and we know the spot. So just meet up with like Vlad here.
Amazing.
And by the time I showed up in Moscow, it was like, I was like greeted by like an entourage of like 7 dudes who were awesome. And it just kind of snowballed. So it was really a cool experience.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. That makes me think of, I don't remember what trip that was, but I know Patrick Wallner went on a Trans-Siberian trip with some of his visual traveling crew back in the day. Maybe it was around the time, maybe it was a few years before you did that, but and I think it was probably the other way around, right? Maybe from the east towards the west?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. But it must be a very, very interesting experience to say the least. But hopefully that can happen again in the future.
Yeah. Well, and now I think one of the most exciting things in skateboarding is like there are so many Russians living in diaspora making like some of the most far out skate videos that I've ever seen. Like Gosha Konishev's stuff. He did skate film where they're skating and they have the winter segment, but a lot of little short art films before it. And there was also the one of the guy skating nature in Montenegro, I think. It was like they're really... No, it wasn't like famous. It was called Raising the Dust, I think, but in Russian.
Okay.
But yeah, it's really interesting stuff. I mean, you know, the Russians always have been really like at the forefront of sort of avant-garde art in a lot of ways, and counterculture. They have a strong cultural backing to push against when they make a countercultural space. So yeah, I'm still just like, man, I want to go skate ice blocks with Gosha or something, because that looks like the most unique skating that I could go find and check out in the world.
Yeah, for sure.
And then obviously, you know, you mentioned Patrick Wallner, but also just Kenny Reed for me was such a huge inspiration. And it was so sick going to like inner Siberia, and you're like, you would find Kenny Reed spots that you're like, I definitely remember this one from like whatever 7-year glitch or something. And you're like, sick, I'm here. That's insane.
All right, let's see. This one is from Arno Wagner.
Oh, sick.
I assume he's French, right?
He's from Grenoble. I say every French word terrible, but...
No, Grenoble is good. I was born there, so okay, interesting that he's from there, okay. So let's see, you said, Ben, I've always wondered why you moved to Seattle, considering you're from California. And why did you stay in Seattle? What is it about the city that drew you in? The proximity with nature, access to culture, skateboarding?
Yeah, why did I live in Seattle? I'm just kidding. No, that's a super good question, though, because it's not an obvious place to go live if you want to be a skateboarder. But I think two things were happening at the time that were really, drew me to that place. One of them is economic, which is that, where I grew up, there were no jobs. Mm-hmm. And the majority of kids would move to LA or SF, but those were also emergently unaffordable cities.
Yeah.
I remember my first place in Seattle, it was $600 for a 2-bedroom city center, historically preserved, beautiful building. You have a garage and a parking space. And those economic conditions meant that there were a ton of just punk spaces around the city where you could go hear concerts for $3 to $5 a night, and not small bands, but big acts would come through because there was such a legendary music scene at the time.
Yeah.
But it was a city where you could be a weirdo artist and get ahead, or at least live well in a way that maybe Berlin would be an equivalent of that for Europe 15 years ago. Not
now, but
not
in the past.
Now, but and so because of that, there was this rich ecosystem of musicians who I came to know through. So there's this guy Shane Yi, who is an architect. He does skate ecosystems now. Mm-hmm. He lived in Morro Bay, but he was part of the Sorcery 118 crew, which was a pretty legendary, early skate YouTube, Tumblr kind of punk group of skaters who, they were kind of the thing that launched Welcome.
Oh, yeah.
So think Nolan Johnson, and then Sam Cole would be another name that maybe has entered the zeitgeist a little bit. But, they weren't a huge group, but having that connection to them, I didn't know anything else like that existing anywhere. And they made skating look really cool. This is 2007 when I chose to move there, and then I actually did in 2010. But that was right when YouTube came out. And, talking about how skateboard media formats and stuff changed what skating was. All the guys on early YouTube, that's where you really saw brands like Welcome, Polar, Magenta break out. And it made everything else look really contrived and stupid that was coming out to see these guys kind of making fun of it all. Mm-hmm. And so Sorcery to me was similar to seeing the Osaka Daggers or something like that, really aspirational. These guys are all friends, they all hang out, they all skate every day, they live in a punk house, and knowing Shane, he would talk about how sick it was up there, and so I was all right, well, I don't know where to go, so I guess I'm gonna go do that. And then I just stayed because I had good friends there. The economy got worse and worse in terms of cost of living. I remember I moved to Japan, I was paying $600 rent. A year went on and I was I'll just rent my old spot or something around there, and it went from $600 to $2,400 a month in that year.
No way.
Yeah, and all the punk spots shut down, either fire code or you can't charge $5 a head to see lightning bolt in a basement if your rent is $3,000. So
yeah,
it was gnarly, but I loved living near the mountains. I was doing a lot of climbing and backcountry skiing at the time. Mm-hmm. And backpacking, cycle touring. Before I did anything with skateboarding, I was doing a lot of gnarly backcountry exploring, and I rode my bike across Europe the first time I was there. I didn't even have a skateboard with me.
Oh wow.
Which was really cool. I started in Sweden, and I ended up in the south of Spain.
Yes, I heard about this actually. So did you do that before you moved to, you settled down in Seattle? Was that around that time?
So it was when I was a university student. I went to Seattle University, so you can figure it out. But I was studying abroad in Granada doing a linguistics exchange program, and basically convinced my advisor, as it turned out, I had a summer before where I didn't have anything booked kind of for the first time in a long time. And I thought, well, if I fly into somewhere really north and I just ride my bike to get to the study abroad, then it's going to work out great. Mm-hmm. But I didn't really have any plan, and I didn't have any money, and I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I had a Rick Steves map of Europe that just one, and a lot of asking people what direction is Prague,
Wow.
Which is super ineffective, but a great way to meet Europe at the ground level.
Yeah, definitely. And so you went from where to where then? So you ended up in Granada, but where did you start?
So my route was like completely nuts. There were some train legs that made it a little bit easier, but I flew into Stockholm, took a train, got to Gothenburg, took the ferry there to the north tip of Denmark. I think it's Frederikshavn, but I'm not like 100% on that. It's been a while. And then I cycled from there all the way down to like Munich, I guess. Wow. Which is really long. And then from Munich, I followed the Danube all the way to Vienna. And you're noticing I'm not ending up in Granada. You know, like this is completely not the right direction for those of you who love geography. And then I found out in Vienna that there's a route that connects that to Prague via a greenway, which was, you know, word of mouth. And so I went to Prague, which is also not Granada or in the direction of Granada. Now I'm going north.
Yeah,
now I'm going northwest.
Vienna to Prague. Yeah, you're definitely going a bit north. Yeah.
Well, then it starts to turn a little bit better, and I had a friend in Leipzig, so I went to Leipzig, and then Dresden and Cologne, and then Amsterdam. So we've gone the wrong way again.
You did like a whole fucking oh my god! Wow! Oh my god!
It was So that's why you don't navigate with a single Rick Steves map that doesn't show distances or label non-capital cities. And then I took the ferry over to England, so now I'm not on the right landmass anymore. And I went to the London Olympics 2012 on opening day by mistake. I had no idea it was happening, and it was like, all right, well, couch surfing here is going to suck. But it worked out. And then anyway, I made it to, did a whole thing around England, took the ferry to the north of France, and then cycled to Paris.
Yeah.
And I did the section from the beach where the ferry came to Paris in one day, which was like the longest cycle that I'll
That's probably like 300 kilometers or something. That's quite a distance, yeah. And
that's really accurate.
That's gnarly, yeah.
And it doesn't feel like it, but it's all slightly uphill because you're going from the coast inland. So
yeah.
And with all your gear, it was gnarly. And so then the next day I was in Paris and I got hit by a truck, and so then I had to take some time off. But so the great thing was that the French hospitals were awesome, and they were super, like, I had never experienced socialized medicine of any kind before, you know. And the only thing that was like funny was that when I got hit by the truck, I was like spraying blood, and the driver was like, you know, kindly told me, you know, like, you're stupid, you should just like, I'm going to not repeat his words because, you know, working with kids, somebody could listen to it. I'm going to be really polite on this to the degree I can, but he basically told me to go get lost, and so I was like walking to a hospital spraying blood out of my hand. And I got there and I was like, they were like, why didn't you take an ambulance? You got your blood all over Paris, you idiot. And I was like, oh, sorry. I forgot you can do that. For me, it's like $3,000 to $5,000 to take an ambulance, so no one ever does it. But they were super cool, and I got to heal up in Chamonix Mont Blanc and keep going after that, but using a little bit more like trains and stuff after that point.
That's a crazy trip right there. How long was that whole trip from Scandinavia all the way to Spain? Like that must have taken weeks. Yeah.
Oh, it was like 6,000 kilometers of cycling, and it took 3 months. So I was averaging like 100 kms a day, but when you average it, obviously there are rest days. Like you get to a city, and then you want to spend a couple days in Prague or whatever, in Vienna.
Sure.
I was like sleeping in like public parks, you know. It wasn't like or on couches, but it wasn't like I really had a good way to stay in the city when I got there. But yeah, it was pretty rad. And again, like you just got to meet a different version of Europe than maybe the average American does, because the majority of Europe is small towns and open countryside.
Yeah.
A lot of just like wheat across middle Germany, you know, but
yeah,
nice people, surprisingly good pastries. Sure got to learn how to order well at the kebab shop, you know.
What a trip. Yeah, that must have been pretty incredible. And so to come back to Arno's question, so you moved to Seattle, you were studying there, and then eventually, like when you went there, did you think I'm just gonna like do 3 years of studying or something, and then eventually I'll move elsewhere? Or did you have kind of a plan like that, or did you just think I'm just gonna go there and we'll figure this out?
The last one. I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was, 17 or when I was a kid. I remember the way I decided what university to go to was like flipping a coin.
Oh yeah. And
I had a little tournament that I could like sort of decide between, I think, 14 schools that I got into. And it was like, all right, well, it's University of Montana versus Seattle University, and Seattle U wins. And I figured the idea I had at the time was that if I got a result and I didn't like it, then I would know that I had a preference and I would go with the one that I regretted not getting.
Okay.
Which is, I don't know if that method holds up as something I'd recommend, but it was a funny way to decide it. And I got down to Seattle University as my final option, and I didn't feel regretful about it. So I was like, I must be cool with this, but had the coin come up the other way, I might have become an environmental journalism student at the University of Montana, and I definitely wouldn't have done skateboarding as much or in the same way.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, for sure.
Oh, I was just going to say, the thing that kept me in Seattle to kind of finish answering Arno's question, other than, having amazing friends, and it made it's a place that's so naturally beautiful that if you were just there and you took weekend trips, you could go to the high desert, you could go to the alpine, you could go to like lush forests, you could go kayaking or snowboarding. And the world record for the most skate parks skated in one day is around Seattle, because there's so many because of Grindline being based there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then there's like a crazy good skate scene as well. 35th North Skate Shop that I am lucky enough to skate for, has like a pretty like stacked roster of dudes, It was a cool place to be, but it also, because of the economics, made a great base camp. So I maybe spent like at most 2/3 or 1/2 of any given year there for the 15 years that I was based there. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity living somewhere more economically pressured. That wouldn't have worked in San Francisco, but I could just sublet my apartment, go be in Europe for 6 months and skate, and then come back and have a job. Seattle also has the best paying like public school jobs of any city, I think, in America, probably.
Oh yeah.
Especially relative to cost of living. So, as a substitute teacher, I was making like between $200 and $300 a day with full benefits, which in America is really important. And so in 5 days of work, I could get enough to pay my rent and then have left over to go, with no obligation to work more than a few days a month. I could go to Europe all the time, or I could go to South America and do all the, I couldn't like live luxuriously, but I could do a ton in skateboarding just because that job was always there for me.
Yeah.
And the rent was cheap, and it was a great place to skate. But it's a really special city. I think if Europeans were to go anywhere in the US, nobody ever goes to Seattle. Arno's actually been to Seattle, so he might know, but it's like as good of a city, I think, as we have.
Mm-hmm.
Not that America is really like a place you'd go for cities. Like I'd go to East Asia or Europe if I want to be in an urban environment, but if you did it in the US, I'd go to Seattle.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Just not in winter.
Yeah, well, the winter must be pretty brutal, but... All right, let's see. We're going to stay a little bit on the topic of Seattle. I have a question from Jake Alexander. Let's see, he said, Ben, we became friends in Seattle in the early mid-2010s. Can you talk a little bit about those years? What you were doing at Seattle University and how you integrated yourself in the Seattle skate scene? And secondly, I've always admired your sense of frugality and ability to travel and live so freely. Can you share some ways you've learned to save money while traveling? Thanks for including me, Quentin, and I hope to get to see you soon, Ben. Much love.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake. So, Quentin, which question would you like me to answer first so that I can stay on topic?
We kind of talked a little bit about the first question. You kind of answered a little bit that, but you were studying and stuff. But could you tell us a little bit about integrating the skate scene over there, I guess?
Yeah, it's funny because I was a really involved student and I really wasn't someone who knew how to say no to things. So I was like really not as involved when I was in university with skating, I guess, as a culture. I mean, I was at the skate park all the time, but I was also leading trips for the outdoor rec club at my school. I was like, going dancing quite a lot, just like all kinds of things, really involved academically as well. And I was trying to graduate with two four-year degrees in 3 years. So I was taking the maximum number of credits that you could take, which is, if you want to tap into that question of frugality, the kind of choice that I made then that I probably wouldn't make now. But 3 years is cheaper than 4 by 25%. So, but I, went to Seattle, like I said, like before, I guess, with no impression that I would ever have any opportunities through skateboarding other than that I would get to skateboard a lot. So I just went and skated with whoever was around. And fortunately, that was some really awesome people. But I definitely, and again, I just feel like I need to say this. I was not the kid where you would see me skate as a 10-year-old and be like, that guy's going to be pro for sure. That was not like what was supposed to happen. And especially not in relative to the media landscape of the early 2000s. When a very different kind of person would be successful in skateboarding than maybe me. I wasn't a particularly... I was ever good as an endurance athlete. I could ride 300 kilometers in a day or climb a mountain, but, probably not winning any awards for agility. But fortunately, though, like if you just skated around Capitol Hill, Seattle in 2010 and you had no intentions of like getting sponsored or social climbing, you would still meet some really amazing dudes. And so like getting to see Nolan Johnson skateboard or, Corey Kennedy's 35th North chop rider and like seeing dudes like that around, it was like, I for sure got schooled because I grew up in a small enough town. You go to the big city and it's like, I don't know anything about fashion or dressing cool. I like don't know anyone who's like a hip musician. I don't know how those guys talk. I don't know how to be in a skate shop. And like I would like try to talk to people about whatever I was studying, which was not the approach socially at the time.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty slow burn for me, I guess, but I had a lot of fun. And having friends like Jake who were like kind of creative, artistic. Jake's a really talented photographer and works at a place called Photographic Center Northwest. I was lucky to have people in my creative milieu who weren't just skaters, but were skaters and something else. And that always stuck with me from that time as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because you've definitely always done a lot of things like we've been talking since the beginning. Like you seem to be you like to do a lot of different things. Like you're obviously a very talented skater, but you're also studying, working, traveling, doing all sorts of other sports or activities. So yeah, that makes sense that you were inspired by people who were not just focused 100% on skating.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in doing a bunch of different stuff. Like if you're only focused on one thing, I don't know where else you would draw inspiration from.
Well, yeah, that's true.
And so, getting to travel the world and be in different countries, but also like, you're like rock climbing and you understand suddenly like, wait, when I do like a hand plant or when I do a layback, like the way I'm positioned, like, you could do it different because you learn some technique in some totally other activity or sport.
Yeah.
Is pretty fun. And then just encountering like lots of different creative ideas that maybe don't exist in the skateboard ecosystem through, hanging out with people who like dance or play in a punk rock band or, are making media in very different ways than skateboarding like traditionally produces media all of a sudden. I think that's like lent my skateboarding a dynamism that doesn't come from me in terms of what I can make on social media because I'm meeting these amazing personalities and kind of synthesizing it in a digestible, accessible way. Mm-hmm. But it's really the people that I'm encountering through traveling and going about life this way that's like, oh, like I would have never found an artist like that, and neither maybe would be some random person who follows me. But yeah, let's see what Liisa Chisholm's up to in London. Oh, that's super sick. Rad.
Mm-hmm. It offered you a lot of food for creativity or like just a lot of inspiration.
Yeah, but it's not, coming from me. I'm not like a creative genius, but just having an eclectic life and going a lot of different places is like such a great way for anyone who wants to go and do something interesting with skateboarding. Like it's right there. Go out and get it,
Well, you just mentioned 35th North. I have a question from Alex Cooper.
Oh, yep.
He said, Ben, can you tell us about your thoughts on the philosophy of the uncarved wood?
I'm like struggling. I'm sure that was something I said to Alex, but you know what? I'm going to just assume I know what he means and I'm going to talk about kind of in a free associating way. I can't wait for him to tell me that I'm just completely barking up the wrong tree. You know what? I'm not actually even so sure that I would be well advised to do that.
Yeah, that's fine. If
I guess his answer was, "Can you tell me?" And the answer is no, I can't.
Okay, well, yeah, that's an answer. All right. Well, yeah. He'll have to remind you what that was.
He'll be good for that too.
He also asked one more question. What does it mean to go beaver mode?
Oh, beaver mode is... So that's been a long-standing joke, I guess, between us. For the last few years, I've had a injured knee that's really affected what I'm able to do. And we started working... Alex is a filmer and in general, just a really creative, interesting person. And we would swim all the time, all year round in Seattle, which is a city like surrounded by lakes and rivers that are pristine. Mm-hmm. So kind of like maybe Stockholm or Copenhagen would be the European analog.
Yeah. Super
special and unique in the Western United States where contamination is a big problem. But so we were swimming like October or later in the season when it starts getting really cold. Mm-hmm. And with my hurt knee, I started like finding all these spots that landed in water.
Okay.
So, a big handrail to enter the lake or something. And I obviously couldn't jump down anything with my bad knee, but it was really funny to go beaver mode and go like skate into the, like off a dock or into water or like so we started filming a bunch of stuff where you end up like you would be skating an impact spot if it had a landing, but it doesn't. So you just go beaver mode.
Okay. Yeah, I see.
But so that'll come out when it does. But it was a lot of fun just like going around the city and looking for stuff that you would never normally skate, like, oh, there's these stairs and they go into the water, but it's super deep. So you can try to kickflip a 10 stair, which you're not going to see me kickflip a 10 stair onto land.
Well, especially with a fragile knee for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Which like my knee's been bad since 2018. I haven't been able to skate impact since, which I don't think did anything bad to my skating. It made me slow down and figure out the kinds of stuff I really wanted to do and that I could do particularly well. Like I was never good at jumping down stuff, even when I could physically. So no one came to me and they're like, oh, that guy who's sick because he can skate 15 stair handrails.
Yeah.
If you want that, go somewhere else.
Yeah. There's plenty of other people that can do that. Yeah.
Sure. So when my skating lost that, it's like it was missing nothing because that didn't contribute any value to what I was doing. So,
we'll talk about your knee maybe later, I guess. But is it getting better? Like, are you skating at all these days, or not quite yet?
So I got ACL and meniscus surgery in December on the 9th. So it's been about 6 months, and I'll be talking to my surgeon in about another month. So after 7 months, which is quite early, about return to sport.
Okay.
Here in the Bay Area, I was lucky to work with a surgeon who works with a lot of like prolific skateboarders, and he has pretty aggressive recovery timelines. So he did and if any of these guys, they're not going to listen to this probably, but if they did and I'm wrong, then I'm sorry for being incorrect. But I think like Mason Silva or Milton Martinez got their knees done by this guy.
Okay.
So, I'd like to think with Mason having done it, I'm working on my SOTI campaign for next year. But
yeah,
fingers crossed the new knee really changes. I'll be happy if I can just slappy a curb. It would certainly be a surprise. But yeah, if I can slappy a curb in July, I'll be super stoked.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed. I hope so, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's do this one from Shinsaku Arakawa. I hope I'm saying his name right. It's a pretty simple question. He said, why do you love Japan?
Before I answer that, I want to say thanks, Shinsaku, and it's amazing that you got a question from him. I think that's really cool. Shinsaku is one of my favorite photographers of skateboarding in the world, and also someone whose work I admire in every other thing that he does. He's from Kyoto, and he has a magazine called Kawa, and it's probably the most unique and interesting piece of like skateboarding print media that I know about. I think that if you're listening to this and you like what I do, check it out. Go find him on the internet, Kawa_IMG. So shout out Shinsaku. And Shinsaku is one of the people that when I look at the ways that he's chosen to feature me in his work, I'm always in a little bit of awe because he's someone I creatively look up to so much for his perspective on skateboarding and how unique it is. So just want to take a moment to appreciate what he's doing over there and suggest
absolutely.
If you like skateboarding and photography, go see what Shinsaku's up to.
Kawa_IMG, you said.
Yeah, and then if people love trying to spell Japanese words, at Shinsaku Arakawa is his personal, but I think Kawa_IMG is going to be a lot easier for people to get to. So
yeah.
Anyway, to the question of why I love Japan, it's for sure the people. I mean, again, I didn't go there because of anime or J-pop.
Yeah.
I went there because of skateboarding, and skateboarding on its own is amazing, but skateboarding is special because of the people that do it. And I was really blown away by how open and earnest and creative and funny the people that I got to meet there were, and how much knowing them gave me opportunities to access Japanese culture that went beyond skateboarding through an insider's frame of reference. So if I had to list all the things I love about Japan, I love the onsen culture, which is the hot springs. I love the food. I love all the weird foods that I've gotten to try through the skaters. Mm-hmm. I love the barbecue culture. I love the music, but I'm not a J-pop fan. I'm listening to a lot of different stuff that maybe isn't as popular outside of the country, but it all comes back to the people. And mm-hmm. There are a lot of, obviously you can't generalize an entire population and say oh, this country is very earnest. There's probably a lot of disingenuous people everywhere, or there's
Sure.
But on average, the people I met there were really, really cool to me. And I think also noticed, and this is something that gets into a bigger topic, I didn't go to Japan to change Japan. The relationship between America and a lot of the rest of the world, but specifically Japan post-war is pretty neo-colonial, where they're a military protectorate and get to dictate their foreign policy. Mm-hmm. Certainly living in a small village with a bunch of samurai houses in the countryside, it's if there's any reason these kids should learn English, it's because it might open opportunities for them. But keep doing your local festivals, keep listening to your local music. I wasn't over there trying to change how anyone Japanese is doing anything.
Yeah.
And I do think the people that I met, especially in Okayama, noticed that I was approaching it that way, and I got a lot of opportunities to participate in festivals or different cultural events that also aren't super open to Westerners. And I think that was there's such a rich culture and history and tradition in Japan as well, and having access to that, as an American, there's no analog to that. My Western colonial society dating back to the society goes back to Britain vaguely, but then my family's not from there, and we don't have a tradition older than 200 years old. I don't know what an American tradition would even mean relative to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Because there's no way, you go to Thanksgiving in the US and someone says cranberry sauce in a can is traditional, and it's canned food is from the 60s. That's not a tradition. It's been repeated twice.
Yeah.
And then you go to a society like Japan, where it's we've done this every year for the last 1,200 years. And then before that, we just did it a little different.
Yeah.
And Europeans can access ancient endemic culture, or relatively at least old endemic cultures. There's a huge back to tradition thing happening in folk scenes around especially the United Kingdom is where I have access to it. People are doing traditional festivals and getting into traditional music and stuff as modernity scares the hell out of everyone. But Japan was an eye-opening experience to a kid from the West Coast who thought 100 years ago was a long time for something to be going on.
I bet, yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it seems you definitely had a good approach while you were there, and the people you met could feel that you were not you were very open and eager to learn about their culture, and not the other way around, kind of not impose your culture on them. That's cool that you got to experience a really singular and authentic part of Japan.
Yeah, I do want to say that it's interesting as a skateboarder who travels to skateboard. I think it's really funny, the tension between saying that I feel that way and approaching Japan that way, and then going to Japan to skateboard, which is a very Western and modern phenomenon. And whenever someone skateboards, you're taking space in a place. You're going somewhere that you're not supposed to do something, and you're using it in a different way. And I don't feel like I'm going to necessarily make friends with this opinion, but I think it's very different if you go as a white man to Japan and you take up space and piss off Japanese security guards or disrespecting the tradition of something. Is who you are and where you are should really affect how you conduct yourself. And I think a lot of skateboarders also aren't thinking about that at all, which is a mistake.
Yeah.
And you see crews go over there and they're treating locals terribly and just acting like it's San Francisco, and it's that's a pretty to throw around a pretty big word. It's a very colonial attitude.
Yeah.
To go and act entitled to Japanese space. I think a lot about space and trespassing and sort of land rights. I think skate urbanism underestimates the importance of those conversations and those ways of thinking, and not to go on like a total tangential rant about that, but like it is interesting to go to a very traditional part of Japan and then be like, okay, I'm going to take up space and use things in a wrong way. And so I was lucky to have local skaters who would take me to spots and show me cool ways to interact with the city. But I definitely had some experiences where I'm like, I'm really in the wrong here, aren't I?
Yeah.
I should not be skating on this. Like, if I go to a monument and skated in Japan, knowing full well that like the old man kicking me out might have been like nuclear bombed by my grandpa, who wasn't a bombardier. But my point is like that generational memory is less than 100 years old.
Yeah.
You know, we're not yet in 2046 when we can say it was a century ago and no one living would remember it.
Exactly.
So yeah, really interesting to like ruminate on where it feels cooler to be more aggressive about stuff. I mean, look at like the Z-Boys were a bunch of, or like just generally early skateboarders in Southern California were like poor kids sneaking into the backyard pools of like middle-class people and taking that space for recreation in a really like radical way.
Yeah.
Like that's super punk rock. Like that's really inspiring. They're transgressing a line that needs to be transgressed at some level that takes on more meaning when you take it on that way.
Yeah.
You know, but does it feel that way when like I'm really struggling not to name names of crews that operate like very disrespectfully in foreign countries, but I think people can think about who's doing this more.
Mm-hmm.
Of just like a bunch of white guys going to like, you know, Southeast Asia and acting like dicks to everyone is it's really lousy. Actually, it's not punk rock at all. You're powerful and you're exploiting that power to take advantage of local people's inability to stop you.
Yeah, no, very true. Well, on the topic of Japan, he's not from Japan, but he's someone that enjoys Japan very much. I'll share you this next question. This one is an audio one.
Hey Ben, what's up? Hope you're well. It was pretty fun to see you recently. My question, actually I have two questions. My question is about how do you manage to make a career in skateboarding without being necessarily linked to the skate medias or to the skate industry? I feel like you've made a career, you built a career kind of like on the side of the skate industry by really doing your own thing and also using social medias, you know. And my other question is about your influence, how you find your creativity and your trick ideas without necessarily copying what's already out there, and by, I guess, finding other inspirations in other fields than just skating. If you could develop on these two, that would be great. All right, much love. I'll see you soon somewhere in the world.
All right. So for anyone listening, that's Léo Valls, as
yes.
I'm sure a lot of people know. And I'm stoked to hear from him. So again, I'm just going to ask, what question should I answer first? What do you think?
Well, maybe we can focus on the first one because someone else asked about kind of your influence, and actually a few people have asked about your influence, and I can see why, because you have such an eclectic and interesting way of skating. So I am also very interested in hearing about how you fuel your creativity and how you come up with trick ideas and everything. But maybe we could focus on the first part of his question, like how did you manage, and how do you manage still today to make a career in skateboarding without necessarily relying too much on skate medias and on the skate industry?
I mean, so the big thing for me in that has always been that I was lucky to exist or to have started entering skateboarding from a media perspective at a time when social media was kind of taking off. Mm-hmm. And just like how, traditional companies were sort of obliterated during the early YouTube period, and you started having brands like Welcome and Magenta or Polar outsell, traditional skate stuff because YouTube was more direct to consumer. It could be more constant. I mean, you could make 1,000 YouTube videos in the time it took the next full length to come out. And so the conversation shifted way faster. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, I was in the right place at the right time doing something that, not because of the skating I was doing necessarily, but just there weren't a lot of white guys filming skateboarding in Japan in 2014 and posting it to social media, or like, and who would then randomly pop up in interior Siberia skating like a quarter pipe on a Lenin statue.
Yeah.
And so I think like traveling gave my skateboarding an element of interest early on that immediately translated to building a following that and engagement that was disproportionate to anything else that I was really doing, and put me in a really interesting third spot where, you know, and again, not because I'm skating really that crazy, but like I was doing something really unique. And so companies like Bones Wheels that, you know, I've been lucky to have like a signature wheel with, or Blast Skates, or all the different companies that have hooked me up over the years, like I think noticed that what I was getting to do was really unique, and the consumers sound so cynical, but like skateboarders were really appreciating that perspective of like different global skateboarding and skateboarding spots that people weren't going to, but it was all built on an apparatus, not of like waiting around for companies to pay for you to go on the trip and that's how the budgeting works, but like doing anything possible to put myself in like the most interesting cultural space based on who I knew, not based on who was famous at the time, you know, like to speak of my love of Grenoble, for example, it's not a skateboarding hotspot in the sense that no one knows the skaters from there as celebrities, but like if you were to travel around and go by word of mouth, you'd notice that like Arno Wagner is an amazing skateboarder, like hugely influential to all the pivot shoves I learned. Like I don't know if he knows this, but I learned them because I saw him, like the way he was doing them, I could understand them immediately because he does them so perfectly, and all the body varials and stuff on transition, that I was like, whoa, this dude is on another level with these tricks. And so I went out and learned as many of them as I could. And or Jojo, who's from the same scene, who's now skating for Heroin, is like a super unique skater. Like there's no two Jojos on the earth. So being able to go directly to these big personalities known by word of mouth and like go skate London with Jake Snelling, or go skate, you know, Grenoble with Jojo, and be in all these Alps skate parks, Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne, which is maybe the best DIY on earth. If you're from like Milwaukee, how are you going to find out about that stuff? Where are you going to see it? And I was lucky enough to be in a position to be a person who could showcase it and give an impression of an expansive skateboarding world. But it's more something that happened because of people like Leo welcoming me to their homes when I was not a known skateboarder at all, and being willing to collaborate because I guess of just pure enthusiasm that I have for traveling and skating first. But if I had waited for a team manager to send me on those trips, I'm not the guy they'd pick for sure. And that's fine. I don't mind. Now that people have seen that I can do some kind of interesting stuff, they're like, oh yeah, you should go on that Monstro trip. Like you should go on wherever. But it didn't come because anyone else wanted it to exist. Yeah. And so the opportunities I've had have been pretty different from other people, because my skateboarding, I've always just like tied to more like social connections, and this sense of like, to not use a cliche, but like just like the global underground of skateboarding opened to me doors that usually don't open for people like me with a lot of eyes on them. And so, you know, if you're following conventional pros, they're going where everybody goes, and I'm going where nobody goes. So
yeah, exactly. To bring it back to Leo for a second, I'm just curious, do you remember how and when you first connected with him? Was it in Bordeaux? Was it elsewhere?
Yeah, so I was super influenced by his skating and just in general the like Bordelais skate scene. And this would be an exact like analog to the experience of going to Japan, going to Triangle Park and meeting Chopper, where shockingly the person is exactly where you expect them to be, and they're as cool as you expect in terms of just immediately being like, oh yeah, let's go skate, which crazy experiences. Like immediately you meet Takahiro Morita, you're skating around Tokyo, you're like shooting photos, and he wants you to be in his next movie. Like Hollywood experience for a lover of the skateboard underground who's a big nerd.
Yeah.
With Leo, I was working as a translator outside of Barcelona, and I was recovering from a broken ankle, but I was doing pretty good, and I just hit him up, I guess, and said like, hey, I'm thinking about coming to Bordeaux. He had no idea who I was, I think. I don't imagine he followed me at the time. This was probably 2013, 2014.
Okay.
But I guess we probably knew some of the same people, because I, had been in Europe for a while skating. Leo's not really like going to Barcelona that much. He is going now. But at the time, it wasn't really his like interest to do that, which is, I mean, Barcelona was, I guess, pretty blown out at the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Associated with a pretty different scene, but
a more mainstream kind of version of skating.
Yeah, which ironically, I was in Barcelona to like hang around Spotter, the DIY, and it was kind of like moving to Japan for the country music was moving to like no one ever does that.
Yeah,
moving to Barcelona in 2014 for the ramp scene was really odd. But so anyway, I hit up Leo and he said, "Yeah, like come skate," and we just hit it off and had an amazing time. It was for me like a movie to get to meet and collaborate with someone who I knew through a computer and find out that actually, yeah, this person's cool and like, wait, all right, what is the next project? Let's do something together and just like getting the ball rolling. But yeah, I just showed up and he showed me around and it was like as cool as you can imagine. And we've been collaborating ever since. We fortunately share a lot of overlap like socioculturally with the friends we have and the places we go. We've been to Sweden together. We've been to Denmark together. We've been to
Brazil, right?
Brazil, which was a crazy trip. Which
Monstro, where was it? Sao Paulo? No.
Rio.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be a 5-hour episode if we talk too much about it, but I have nothing else going on. So.
me neither. Let's do it.
But yeah, that was a life-changing trip for me too. That one was amazing.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
But yeah, I've gotten to, and also just going to Bordeaux and meeting all those guys, like that was a scene that I really admired. Going back to like Minuit and like the old, like OG YouTube, early Magenta stuff, kind of like the Japanese skating I liked was a distillation of the, East Coast underground, like Eastern exposure or whatever. The French skating was like a cool, at that time, remix of the Japanese skating.
Yeah.
That made a huge global impact, and for me was like eye-opening what you could do with a skate video other than just skate. And I loved that they always put dudes in the video who are just their homies. I think that's something way more skate videos need to do, that like there should always be a trick that's funny and interesting but that I could do, or that a normal person would see and be like, oh, like, yeah, that guy did a kickflip front board down a 10-stair handrail and then that dude did a boneless like to 50-50 and it was super ugly but it was sick.
Yeah, so some more relatable kind of skating. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there's a real demand for it. And again, like talking about how I've had a career in skateboarding, it's like sometimes people just want to see a really meaty frontside grind. It doesn't have to melt your face off. It's like watching a culinary TV show and everyone's eating like really fine dining and I don't know what it looks like. Sometimes I just want to see a guy eat a cheeseburger,
Yeah.
That one I know what it's like.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, let's move to this next question because this guy kind of asked a similar thing to Leo's second question. Let's see.
What's up, Ben? It's Charlie from Scotland. I really love your creative approach to skateboarding and to making up these tricks and linking things together. What I'd really like to know is where do you draw inspiration from through videos? And what kind of things can you watch and to interpret on your skateboard? And I know the answer to this because we're friends. So maybe a hint, not skateboarding videos. Okay, all the best, brother. Lots of love. Ciao.
All right, Charles Myatt from Glasgow, Scotland. Well, really from Helensburgh, but shout out Helensburgh. But I love it when someone asks a question and they know the answer.
Yeah.
It gives you the opportunity to not answer it correctly and no one else will ever know. But I'm going to answer accurately, which is I really like watching videos from other sports and activities. Like, I'll watch like dancing or biking or snowboarding or skiing or like rollerblading videos are sick. Like, I'm not necessarily looking at them and being like, that looks like a cool person, but usually it is like they're like, everybody's cool. Like you don't have to be a skater to be cool. But when you see what different people are doing with sports, like obviously they're drawing way more broadly than just like skateboarding's historic connection to itself. And the ways that people can move in space with the board attached to their feet, like on a snowboard, are really crazy compared to what like skaters are doing. But so it makes you think, like, how could you do something like that, but with what I have? And it comes out with some pretty funny solutions because, you know, you might try to approximate it and then you don't get close at all, but you made up something that no one's ever done on a skateboard for sure.
Yeah.
Or like, I really love to like dance and watch dancing. I did swing dancing a lot as a kid, which is a version of jazz dance that came out of, you know, Black communities going back to the early 20th century. And like, definitely that was a practice where I learned how to like move my body in more interesting ways and started to think about how you show up in space. That really influenced my skating. I was like, oh, these guys have like crazy style. They're moving with their whole, like they're using their upper body. They have like wide, crazy knees. Like, and if you start like playing skateboarding through the lens of dancing or rollerblading or whatever, you're going to get something pretty weird that isn't what other people are doing. And I think that that's like a sick opportunity to like see, even like watching like animals move. You're like, oh, sick. You could do that. Like that's, I don't know, watch a monkey run through like a forest and just be like, dang, those guys are sick. They're way better at like climbing than me.
Yeah. That's kind of reminding me of, what's his name? The Spirit Quest video.
Colin Reed.
Yes, thank you. I was blanking on his name. But yeah, just what you mentioned right now, just with the animals and kind of how that can influence a skater, or that can resemble a skater's movements. Do you kind of just randomly watch some stuff, or do you kind of consciously select something and you're like, okay, I'm just going to watch this rollerblading, this dance video, this whatever it is, and you're just watching that and kind of absorbing it, and eventually maybe some ideas will pop into your head of how can I translate some elements of this into skateboarding?
No, it's not intentional, I think. And I think that's one of the things that happens in interviews and that can make people come off really like conceited or weird, is that when you start having someone explain their process, they want to sound like a genius and be like, oh, I always intended this. I knew that this would work for me because I was approaching it so smart. And kind of like if I'm talking about how I traveled and made a career out of skateboarding, it's like, oh, I knew it all along. I had no idea.
You masterminded this whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, I was going genius mode. No, I made a lot of mistakes. I did a lot of things the wrong way. I missed a lot of opportunities. But I was also in the right place a lot of the right time because I was just out doing things. So to the same vein, like I come up with a lot of ideas that are just total duds through watching like surfing videos and being like, oh, you could do that. That'd be sick. And then you do it and you watch it back. You're like, that was not cool. And sometimes it's so wacky. You're like, all right, cool. I'm going to post this because it's funny. But 90% of the time, like, yeah, it's not like some cerebral genius mode, like, oh yeah, I'm like gonna transpose rollerblading into skateboard. Nobody wants that or thinks it's that pretty. But I just like am pretty naturally interested in stuff, so I end up and especially like traveling and being in creative spaces, like you get to meet someone who all of a sudden exposes you to something you wouldn't have encountered, and it's like, all right, now I'm watching like a scooter video. It's not really my thing. It doesn't make me a genius to do that. It's just like, oh, well, because I was in this space and this was happening, I encountered something, and then, all right, I guess I'm going to go try that. Like, that seems cool. There's an old adage that's write drunk, edit sober, though. And I think that's, have you ever encountered that one?
No, but it makes sense. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. Rather than the opposite. Yeah.
The opposite would be really bad.
Yeah, probably.
And there's lots of skaters who need an editor because they'll just come up with crazy, nonsensical stuff and then just put it all out there. Or people who need someone to push them for new ideas. And I think it's really important to not share everything and to iterate and to say like, oh, this idea is cool, but it's like it needs to be polished into something more interesting, or maybe wait until you have the spot for it. And so the right drunk component of it is just like go out and make whatever you can make. Like I produce a ton of footage and then cut half. So if anyone is out there looking at what I do, just be be reassured that this is there's 50% more that's worse.
Yeah, it's the tip of the iceberg, kind of.
This is the most polished, best version of what I do. So be glad it's not even worse, but it could be even crazier. But if you're not worried about what you produce while you're iterating, you can try to experiment a lot more too. And you have a lot of really good sessions that way.
Let me show you the second one from Charles.
One other question for Ben would be, how do you check your turning circle on a skateboard? And how do you get the board together to turn like that?
So I'm not sure what I couldn't really understand his question. Like, what is he referring to?
So what he's referring to is a skateboard has a turning radius. Every vehicle has a turning radius that can turn, right? There's the tightest it could go in a circle. And so the turning radius on a skateboard is, it depends on your wheelbase, your truck height, your truck geometry, right? Because not every skateboard can turn the same in the same tight space. Mm-hmm. You imagine a longboard with like really low trucks where the wheels will touch the board really quickly. It's going to make like a 20-foot circle, right? Because ultimately, even if the trucks could inset more and turn tighter, the wheels contact the board surface really quickly, and so it maxes out, right?
Yeah.
And then you can't go any tighter than that because it would stop itself.
Right.
That's really funny that he asks it. I think I really don't want this to become too boring. I really love a board with a tight turning radius. I like skating weird small spots. So I've spent a lot of time figuring out how to make a skateboard turn tighter and more effectively.
Okay.
So if you wanted to turn your skateboard tighter, the things you'd want to do would be make your truck taller and inset more, and you'd want to have a shorter wheelbase. And to test it, to answer his question, you would place your foot as far to the inside of the middle of the board where you're maximally, affecting the trucks. And I like to just push in a little circle, and you get right to where you would wheel bite, and then you push in a circle. You see how tight it gets.
Okay.
And that's it. Like on my personal boards, I really like to make sure that's really tight, and then I like to have softer wheels so that you grip more. Because when you grip more, you can lean further with your body weight. If you have really hard wheels, you need really loose trucks to turn because you can't offset your weight very much before you wheel bite. But if you have a tighter truck and a softer wheel, you can lean with your whole body, which you need to do. You can't just like turn the board with no weight displacement because you're not going to be able to. Mm-hmm. And if any of those components isn't there, like if you have hard wheels and you have tight trucks, you'll never turn it because you'll just slide out the second you lean far enough.
Yeah.
But that would be a good example of where you could get inspiration from somewhere else. Like I was watching skiing and snowboarding, and they lean super far to the side when they turn. And in order to make a skateboard that works like that, you need to reimagine it quite a bit. And which is what longboarders do. They have soft wheels and they have relatively tight trucks and long wheelbases, but they're like able to lean against resistance and displace their weight, which feels amazing. And so my boards work a little more like that. And I think it gives my skateboarding a little bit of a unique look because you can get lower and like angle your body way more if you're skating it a setup like that. You're not going to slide like a super long, lip slide on a ledge with my wheels usually because they're pretty soft.
Yeah, it's not going to slide as well as a harder wheel.
Not at all. And back in the day, I was buying new old stock 80s wheels on eBay just to find like 95A formulas because that didn't exist in 2014 at all. Okay. You couldn't get a wheel like that in the industry that was halfway good. So I was buying like 80s ones.
Wow. And
really experimenting with setups. I'm glad I don't have to be such a big nerd anymore because there's like X Formula 95s I can get in a box shipped to me and they work really well. But yeah, at the time that was like a pretty radical idea that you would skate street on softer wheels and skate ramp on harder ones.
Yeah.
But Seattle, if you've been there, so it's rough, like it's rain affected.
Yeah.
Having softer wheels, like if you're going to skate in Siberia or in Turkey or in Brazil, like I don't know how those dudes skate 52 millimeter 101A wheels in Sao Paulo because it's so rough.
Yeah, crusty.
And then you go there with like, 58 millimeter 95 or 8 like softer wheels, and it's like, oh, everything works way better. you end up getting destroyed hands because you're falling going fast onto these rough spots, but at least you can skate like the Pedra Portuguesa and like all the rough stones and do tricks on stuff that doesn't work otherwise.
I don't know if you're still writing for them, but I know you were sponsored by Film Trucks for quite some time. And I was wondering if you, how important are the trucks in all this configuration? Like, is this something you discussed with like Jeremy or some other people? Like, how important are the trucks in this whole thing?
So, God, this is a 2-part answer and one part is really short, which is just, I get driven insane by the ways people approach their setup, being too particular about it. It's a skateboard. Like every board on the wall in a skate shop could win the Olympics in 2026. They're all amazing. Obviously, and it really drives me nuts when someone's like, I need exactly a 14.12897 wheelbase to do a slappy. Like, no, you don't. You could kickflip up a curb on like a heroin egg board or on a water ski. Like it doesn't really matter. Like if you're cab backflipping Hollywood 16, you need a special setup. So, and I'm sure I'm going to really anger someone who's like, no, but I can only nollie hard flip on a 8.126. And it's like, yeah, maybe, but I'll bet that's more in your head because I don't think the boards are made to the 1,000th of an inch precision tolerance anyway.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's psychological for sure. But so first, my opinion is not to worry about it too much. And then my second opinion is that it absolutely matters what the trucks are. And yeah, because the truck's geometry determines your maximum. Like if they just tilt, but they don't inset, yeah, it's not stable and it also doesn't turn. So I like how film trucks turn. There's a couple other trucks on the market that also have great turning characteristics. It's not like some super brand new, only one company's making a truck that turns. I've also skated trucks that just don't have a great active feeling. Bushings and pivot cups matter more than anyone thinks. If you wanted me to immediately contradict my claim that it doesn't matter and don't worry about it, try changing your pivot cups though. I get mine imported from Japan and my board feels like butter. And a good like bushing that has a nice amount of resistance and give, made of a high quality like soft urethane, like it gives your board rebound. When you pump out of your carves, you'll feel it more. So yeah, do it because it's fun and it feels good to have a crazy setup, but it's not going to help you to do a slappy, to have new bushings. Like it's going to make your carve feel better. So I don't know. I'm both a nerd and I'm sick of the nerds a little bit.
Yeah. We're all full of contradictions, but
aren't we just? Isn't the human condition wonderful that way?
All right, let's do this next one.
Hey Ben, I got 2 questions for you. I think it is obvious that you have a distinctive approach to your skating. Where does your inspiration come from? And do you have any memorable, like funny or quirky moment from our trips that you'd like to share? Hope you're doing good, brother.
Could you recognize who that was? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. It's Rémi, right?
Right. Yeah. Rémi Luciani. Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, Rémi makes a series called Monstro, and he also made like Marseille Zoo and a bunch of really amazing independent videos. Is a super talented videographer.
Yeah.
And yeah, so good to hear from him. I love the guy. He's such an interesting creative mind and so dedicated to what he does. So meticulous in his craft and really bringing a lot of energy to making skate videos that I'm so lucky to be a part of what he's doing. And, you know, I think part of what sets Monstro apart as a series is that he's taking really far out personalities and creative skaters and giving them the same attention and kind of love that you would normally see from a company video.
Yeah.
Of like going on an exotic foreign, and I say exotic with a little asterisk that maybe that's a problematic word choice, but going to really far away places with really weird, interesting terrain that people don't always go. And then, you know, bringing like Léo Valls, Sergio Santoro, Kento Yoshioka, these sort of far out personalities. And he's a really tolerant person to go travel with all of us because we all bring a lot of different energy and crazy ideas and inspiration. But
must be interesting though. I mean, such unique skaters in his videos. It must be quite a fun time to witness that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and it's also just a place where like I wouldn't normally. Well, I don't know if I wouldn't normally, but like it's not all the time that I get to go to Brazil and spend weeks with Sergio Santoro, who wasn't someone I really knew personally. I like had been familiar with his skating for a long time, and then all of a sudden I'm hanging out with his dad in like Santa Teresa in Rio de Janeiro and meeting all of his friends and like meeting his cat and like hanging out. So and that really happened because we all want to work with Rémi because he's an amazing guy and he's an amazing filmer. But I guess in terms of stories, I'll just talk about that Rio trip because it was a really cool one for me. My story with it starts quite a bit earlier, which is that I in 2021 I had like a massive concussion skating a ramp near where I grew up in Cayucas, which is like one of the best outdoor mini ramps in the world. Like if you like skating transition, try to go there, you'll have a great time.
Okay.
But it's in a 3,000 person town. It's right by the beach. You can see the wave from it. And I knocked myself out like so bad. I couldn't go outside for like weeks. Like daylight hurt too much.
Oh, wow.
And it was like one of the worst things I ever did. And then I made it about 6 months. And this is around like 2020. It's the pandemic. There's a lot of things going on in society and culture that are really gnarly. There was like during the Black Lives Matter protests of that year, in memory of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and just sort of this moment of American activism and rebellion. And I was living in the center of it, and I was, already had like paranoid medical anxiety, and I just had like a total mental breakdown where I just remember like one day feeling like I broke inside and I couldn't read anymore. That was the first thing that made me think I was going to die.
Oh, wow. And
I like had a panic attack, which I thought was a heart attack, and I'd never had one of those before. But it's really common if you've had like a major head injury to have post-concussion disorder for a long time, and it makes executive function and self-regulation, communication, all those things get a lot harder. And for me, I just sort of had like my capacities diminish and my demands increase, and to the point that it became completely unsustainable. And my brain basically, I started having a heart rate of like 190, or like blood pressure of like 190. Like I needed to go to the ER all the time because I thought I was going to die.
Wow.
And with the American medical system, I was like driving to the ER, and I felt my transmission go out of my car, and I was like, this is it, I'm done.
Holy shit.
Like it was just a really, really bad time for me, where all the kind of living hard caught up all at once. And I was feeling really depressed about like, racism in society in America, and a lot of the things that were going on were just really psychologically intense. And then I was trying to manage it when I also like couldn't read, didn't really have control of my emotions, and was newly diagnosable with panic disorder and general anxiety that I'd never had. Which was like, I'm not a naturally very cautious or anxious person. I'm pretty open and like stuff. And so experiencing anxiety like that for the first time was like seeing a new color that you've never seen. I had no idea that you could feel like that, and I thought it was medically like I was having a brain tumor or a heart attack. I had no preparation for it psychologically. But also, if you ever have a head injury, just like do work with a doctor or neurologist. Little PSA there. I didn't know that it was going to affect me later.
Yeah, for sure.
I got through the acute recovery period, and I was like, all right, I'm back to normal, and I started taking on more and more, and then half a year later,
to you, kind of,
it really caught up, and it lasted for years. But so I had at that point moved back with my parents in Morro Bay to get more help, which I really appreciated them for. I thought that was going to be a lot harder, and they were really supportive, which was really cool. And it was definitely a moment where we came closer because they were able to look at me doing so badly and just be like, yeah, but we want you to be doing better. And they were really cool about it. And I think softened a lot through that experience of just like being like seeing me be just like so humbled. But I was there in Morro Bay at my parents' house, and I got the call from Leo, and I couldn't go outside at this point. Like it was too bright in the daylight. I hit the back of my head, which is the occipital lobe, and usually what happens, you hit the back of your head, you get a lot of vision stuff from the immediate hit, and then in the front of your head, your brain bounces in your skull, and you get a coup contre coup. Which is like reverse hit. And in the front is executive function, reasoning, a lot of the stuff you really don't want to mess with. So it's kind of a common pairing. It's not what you want, but I couldn't make plans or decide. Communicating with people was a lot harder. But I got the call from Leo, and he's like, "Hey, what's up, dude? Like, I don't think he knew any of this was going on. He's like, you want to come to Brazil in like maybe a month or a couple weeks. And I was like, before I really thought about my total inability to do it, I just said yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Which was a gnarly choice. And I was like taking meds that were supposed to help and doing things, but it really was a gnarly thing to accept going on that trip at that moment. And I booked the ticket, and it just, the irreality of it was really jarring. And I didn't know about exposure therapy, or like I didn't have access to that sort of medical resource. But for a lot of people who are having that sort of a thing, like being exposed with anxiety to more stressful situations, being exposed to more like light and stimulus can actually be beneficial if it's done in a controlled way.
Okay.
I would definitely not assume that applies to you if you're listening to this in your parents' house because you just had a major, like, go talk to your doctor if you really are taking advice.
Obviously,
but
yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
For me, it was an amazing life change. It was like, I showed up in Brazil and got in the taxi, and like Sergio and Leo and I think Rémi all came and met me. It was like, I hadn't even really been on trips like that, to be honest, where there was like media. It was Solo Skate Mag, had a photographer, Clément, with us.
Oh, Clément Arpillard or something like that?
That's the one. I was waiting for you to say the last name so I didn't insult him by butchering.
Harpillard.
Yeah, Harpillard. I don't even want to say it, but he was there. Rémi was there, who I'd never met before. Sergio was there, who I'd never met before, and it was gnarly for me, to be honest. Like,
did you tell them what you were going through, or?
Yeah, but there's no way you can really express it in words. Like, I mean, there'll always have been a me before the head injury and a me after, to some degree. And I feel more like myself now, but it's taken like 4 or 5 years to get to a point where I'm
more
feeling back to my old self in a lot of ways. Yeah. And part of that's just getting used to, like, you know, I have tinnitus all the time and I can hear a buzzing, but I'm used to it. But I didn't before, or it was really infrequent. So that trip was so challenging. Like, the conditions were hard. The city was hard. The city was amazing. I love Brazilian music and culture, but it was kind of like Japan, where like everyone goes for one reason and I was going for skating. So the way I could encounter it was super different. But then it's like a few weeks there and I felt like a whole new person. It was really life affirming for me. And just like, I felt like I woke up to myself again there. And it was really crazy also to then finish the trip and get the cover of Solo Skate Mag, which is my only cover I ever had. Doing a hand-me-down is often what I called that trick, Ben Kron trick. Legendary Portland skater would be the first one on that. But yeah, that was like, I went from like 0 to 100 in a couple weeks of just transformative saying yes and trying and failing and trying again, and a lot of taking breaks, wearing sunglasses, like a lot of trusting the people on the trip to understand, like, if I'm saying something that doesn't seem true, I don't know what reality is anymore, you know? Mm-hmm. I'm trying to be the best version of myself that I can, and if I say something that like is annoying, or I just need to leave the spot and go home right away because it's like too gnarly, like but it was gnarly for sure. But it was also a place where I just came back to life, and I'll always love Brazil for that. And I went back the next year and worked on a video, Beats 2, which was really fun. It's a Sao Paulo based video series. Beats 1, well, it's a series of 2 videos, so whatever you think. But Beats 1 was a really sick, Alexandre Cotins is the filmer, and he's really creative, and he was showcasing like big crazy personalities in Brazil in like the 2010s, maybe like 2014 or something, with the original Beats, which I had seen, and getting to meet him was so cool like those guys on the Monstro trip. And like Daniel Marquez, who's, I'm super Americanizing his name for the sake of other people knowing what I'm saying, is like super influential, interesting skater that I hope more people see his skating, but also his ideas and the poetry of what he's putting out there. And just meeting those guys was like, wow, this is another universe of creative, interesting skating and influence, and just music and food, and, you know, Brazil and its history are so interesting.
Was that your first time out there in Brazil?
The Monstro trip was my first time, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's crazy to hear that you, despite what you were going through, that you had the intuition of, okay, I'm gonna say yes to this. Although, like, medically speaking, like it's probably really gnarly. Like your doctor probably would have not recommended you to do that. But
well, as an American, I didn't have a doctor, so there was no one to advise me.
Yeah.
You know. If I had one, though, they would have probably said you're crazy for doing that.
Exactly. Yeah. And but no, it's interesting that you decided to go and made it work, and it ended up being like a very bringing you back to life, kind of, or bringing you back to closer to where you were before the injury. Yeah. So that's,
well, and I
that's
think
really
part
cool.
of it, like, it forced me to learn to compensate for the things I was going through. You know, like.
Mm-hmm.
Because it wasn't that it stopped me from having panic attacks, it's that it gave me no backup but myself to manage them.
Yeah.
It's like I had to get new sunglasses for the trip and learn how to be in bright spaces and wear my hat really low, and maybe not in a cool way, but it's like I still wear my hats like really low over my eyes because it's better for me.
Yeah, sure.
But for the things you can't heal, like, you have to try to learn to compensate for them. But the other thing that was gnarly during that period is, like, I had for a long time in my life, like, tested my composure by doing things like climbing mountains or rock climbing, or, you know, like these kind of gnarly, putting yourself in experiences and seeing that, yeah, you hold up to it and you can still be rational and make good choices. And that was like the first time in my life where I hit the limit of that and I had no composure. And I knew that, like, unlike before, if I was ever doing something like surfing in big waves, I could panic and then what would happen? And you had to think about what would happen if mentally I was unable to be rational in a situation where you needed to make good decisions and not freak out. And so it's like you lose confidence in yourself that makes you less reliable, and then it makes you lose more confidence in yourself.
Oh yeah, it's like a vicious cycle, and yeah.
You're like, I can't go surfing because if I panic in the waves and it's big or it gets bigger, like, I'm going to drown. And so even if it's all in my head, it becomes reality. And, you know, yeah, it was really, like, forced me to soften a lot to things that I couldn't control in life, which I think was good for me in the end, but it was not, didn't make me a better mountain climber.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we can live very productive and interesting lives without rock climbing. So
it took me a while to learn that, but yeah, it's very true.
Although to keep the option open would be great, but, like, yeah, it's fine. You can do a lot of other shit. So
yeah, well, and I think it's also helped me to work, like, with kids with disabilities or people with disabilities, to have had that experience.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't relate to being powerless in that way before going through that, and then when you like, I just spent my last clinical rotation in speech and language pathology working with people with aphasia, and, like, which is the loss of language after a stroke.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I don't know what that's like. That's a really gnarly thing to go through, and really reduces what a lot of people can expect out of their lives. But before having a major head injury, like, I couldn't relate to it at all, to be honest.
Yeah.
Things worked pretty well in my brain before that, and they still work all right. But I, for the first time, knew what it was like to not be in control of yourself and not to have things work how they used to, and just that frustration. So I don't know, a really softening experience, I think, for me all around.
For sure. But I'm glad to hear you're doing better, and that you
way
kind
better.
of, you found ways to go through life despite all these obstacles, and now you're doing okay. But yeah, wow, that must have been pretty gnarly to go through.
Yeah, last one I'll say is I would like to take this moment to thank my wife, Zoe, for supporting me through that. It was very hard for her, and she was an amazing support to me through that time. That it probably it was not fun to hang out with me for about 6 straight months.
Yeah, I bet, yeah.
So, you know, thank God for that support network with her, and the ways that she stepped up and softened to my weakness, and learned to slow things down, and just really saw how crappy things were for me, and was willing to sit with me through the hard parts. Because having a caregiver who is always demanding more of you in that situation wouldn't have worked. So yeah, all right, that was a heavy topic. Maybe we'll move to
but it's all good, and I appreciate you sharing all that. Yeah, it's really interesting, and yeah, I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate hearing about that. All right. Well, we're gonna change topics a little bit. This one is from Thomas Campbell.
Sick.
So he asked a couple of things, but let's maybe do this one. He said, "What luminaries outside of skating inspire you? Authors, philosophers, artists, filmmakers."
It's really hard for me not to then just say Thomas Campbell inspires me.
Yeah. Well, he's kind of a little bit of all of those. Like.
He is within skateboarding, though, so I don't know if he meets his own criteria.
Yeah, that's true.
I love what Thomas makes and how he's approached skateboarding, and I think also that whole Beautiful Losers generation of artists. I don't know if you've seen that film, but like...
I haven't, but I know what you're talking... Is it with the movement with like Ed Templeton and... Yeah, I know a little bit about it, but yeah.
Yeah, so to cycle back and answer his question more in the spirit that it was asked... One that comes to mind, and it's almost a throwback to earlier I was saying that the Brazil video is called Beats, was I really enjoyed like the poetry and novels of the Beat generation when I was like 16. And for sure those changed my trajectory. Like Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, Gary Snyder is probably the like best person of that bunch. They weren't always great people. But like reading people like Jack Kerouac's first person perspective of like, you know, hopping freight trains, going to San Francisco, going to the poetry reading, really just putting yourself out there in an extreme way and traveling and meeting people. I, as a young person, was like really inspired by that vision of life on the road. And just sort of the way those guys were asking questions through first person experience of like, if Gary Snyder was wondering about ecology, he wasn't going to do it just in a city. He was going to go find a job in a fire lookout and spend all summer meditating on Mount Hosamine in British Columbia. And then he would have something more interesting to say. So like, I don't know, I worked in forestry in my mid-20s. Like a lot of the things I did were inspired by stuff I would encounter in those books. And then the guys who inspired them, you know, who are a lot of like Latin American authors of the early 20th century and sort of the vanguard movements. So the surrealists and all of the things that kind of came from Andre Breton's manifesto that sparked so many manifestos. A lot of named movements in schools. And I really liked learning about that stuff because it gave me the sense of like a global creative milieu that skateboarding also had, but not named and not acknowledged. And just inspired me to like, I know Jake Alexander asked me about frugality and my approach, and it was very informed by those books of just like, which you could see an analog between that and like Antihero Tent City, which was an instruction manual for a kid trying to figure it out. Go sleep in the bowl, go ride your bike, go hitchhike, put your thumb out, jump in the car, don't worry about where it's going too much, and show up, and then be cool and do what people are doing, and you can go wherever. So to Thomas's question, those guys were really an impactful generational look at what that could look like. And, you know, I remember when I met Thomas for the first time, he gave me a copy of Love with a Few Hairs, which is Mohammed Merabit, a Moroccan author translated by Paul Bowles.
Okay.
And we had a talk about those guys and their approach. You could just see that was something that Thomas could relate to in a lot of ways. And it was really cool to see that, like, in some of the same ways that I had applied the lessons of those books abstractly to skateboarding, he had approached to surfing and art life. And you take those guys, you learn about like Beautiful Losers and that like creative generation and how it really was connected between that, Mark Gonzalez, Barry McGee, like all like Ed Templeton, that a skater could be an artist and write a book and then make a crazy movie. Like, you know, that was what drew me ever to skateboarding, you know, was the big creative personalities and the far like larger than life persona that people would have. They were like pro wrestlers as a kid. You learn about Chad Muskin, you're like, oh, Chadillac Muscalade's sick. He's like making a record with Jeru the Damaja and like Africa Bombada, and he's like hanging out with Paris Hilton. And that looks a lot cooler than like a pro baseball player. And he'd paint his own board graphic or do what. That's sick, you know. But yeah, those books were really influential. I like to read a lot of stuff, though. I studied literature in university, but if I keep talking about it, people are gonna, like, if anyone's still listening at this point, thanks for your patience, because we talked about head injuries, turning radii, literature of the mid-20th century, so
That's great. I love that. And people will probably listen to this in little bits. So yeah, they can listen to 1 hour here, 1 hour there, or whatever. So that's fine. All right, let's do this next one.
Yo Ben, hope you're good. Bastien here. Since we worked on the Jenkins video part, and I know that we have edited the part based on a chronological order, I was wondering if we were free to edit in any order, what would you have picked as your real ender? I know that the one in London is pretty sick, but maybe you have another one in mind, and maybe another favorite memory. It was a pleasure to work with you on that one. It's probably the most challenging filming I've done in my whole life. All right, take care, man.
So for people listening, that's Bastien, and I'm going to let you say the French last name again.
Yeah,
so
Regeste, Bastien Regeste, yeah.
Bastien's amazing. He was working with film trucks on the video part that we made. I think it was 2021 or 2022. And
yeah, I think 21, yeah.
Yeah, that project really grew, and his burden of following me around, thanks in no small part to Jérémy from film, I suppose, paying him to do so. Mm-hmm. It was a real delight to work with him, but he's a very tolerant person because I skateboard in a way that's not super easy to film anyway.
I'm sure, yeah.
Space and not doing things that people normally have to figure out how to make interesting, and I have a lot of ideas about like, oh, if I do this, it would be cool filmed from here, not there. Like, it's going to be my back rolling away. Can you run around me in a circle while I skate fast through this plaza? And fortunately, Bastien's an amazing filmer, and his video series, Beer, which is B parentheses EER,
right,
is really sick too. So something to check from the Montpellier skate scene. To his question, I would totally keep that as the ender. I think the trick is a chopper flip on this rail above a quarter pipe in
Copenhagen? London.
South London, yeah. And in the background are Matthew Bromley from Blast Skates and Liisa Chisholm, who was one of my first connections to the brand, so it feels very appropriate they were there together. Mm-hmm. And I think Charlie, who asked a question, was also there on that session because we went to an art show shortly thereafter. But I had like really wanted to do that trick on a spot that kind of elevated it from being a gimmick into being something more legit. And I skated that spot, and one of my friends, like a lot of people in the comments were like, dude, you have to try to do that on it. It looks like
people were telling
spot.
You about it before?
I mean, I had skated the spot and I did a trick where my wheel locked in, but not that. It's a different thing. And a bunch of people were like, dude, you have to do the flip on it. Like, It's going to be super sick. That was the first trick that I did that really went viral on social media and brought a lot of attention to my page as well. Was like, I remember like the rapper T-Pain reposted one, or like a bunch of I sold the rights to it and made like thousands of dollars.
Wow.
From like People Are Awesome YouTube channel paid me to use it. Which,
holy shit.
Yeah, it really made a lot of, I don't think they know that they were funding a bunch of independent skateboard media, but stuff like that really went to Leo's question as well earlier. Like, how did you do it? It's like getting really lucky over and over and over again. But so I'd done those. They were a little bit, I guess, of a thing that people knew me for, even though the trick goes back to Chopper of the Osaka Daggers, who's, been a mentor to me in a lot of ways. And doing it on a legit spot where it really combines ramp skating, weird tech skating, and it's street. Like, it felt like a real like exclamation point on all the things I wanted to put into one thing.
Yeah.
So I'm keeping that as the ender probably, and it's definitely the trick from the part that I hear the most about. It didn't take the longest for sure, and it wasn't the hardest to do. It just worked really well. A lot of taking off my trucks, putting on different riser pad combinations, like adjusting the tightness and the looseness though, because the rail's curved and a little too big, so it doesn't want to lock on well.
Okay.
Or it wanted to fall off really easily. And so you could either make it lock in and do the flip, but then you couldn't get out, or you could like have it not lock in. Or, it just like, it took so much non-skateboarding work to make that happen.
Yeah, okay.
And then when it did, it was super easy because I had the setup was that I had a lot of risers on my front truck so that truck would come out really easily. And then I had my back truck be like shorter, so it would hold onto the rail with the back truck and then release at the front. It was pretty gimmicky. I felt pretty like I was on some fancy lad wavelength with that one.
Yeah.
I like to do skating where you don't have to really modify the spot at all, and I don't even really wax stuff usually. I try to skate things how they are and just encounter terrain.
Just raw, kind of like
just kind of raw.
Wax.
Just like what could you do with what's immediately around? I'm not opposed to waxing at all. I love a good waxy ledge, but it is really fun to just find stuff and try to like figure out what you can do with it.
Yeah, adapt to the environment as much as possible.
Yeah. And the more you adapt, the more interesting the outcome, I think, is. You know, like if I learned a trick in a skate park and then found a ledge identical to that skate park and did it in the street, that it's not as much like the street skating that attracts me to street skating, which is really figuring out how to skate what's in front of you and like the kind of approach that would make Japanese skaters skate differently from Brazilian skaters skate differently from New York skaters because they're adapting to different things versus all of those people going out and finding identical ledge spots and doing the same trick on the same terrain.
Yeah.
But that is all to say to Bastian's question, no, that's for sure the one.
Yeah,
I'm super happy with that.
So that one wasn't too much of a battle, you said? Like you had to figure it out, but not necessarily go through an incredible amount of tries to get it?
No, I almost never do anything that takes me like... I never come back to stuff, usually. And that's partially because I'm usually on trips and I'm working in a really time-restricted way. And I've learned to work in a really time-restricted way. So you try what's attainable and you're not grudge matching stuff. I have the opposite approach of like Tom Karangelov, who's like, you know, or anyone who goes back to a spot 16 times. It's what I do works because it works. And fortunately, like if I hadn't landed it that day, I wouldn't have done it because I would have been on to the next city.
You wouldn't have
on the trip
been
anyway.
Like, I need to go back to London at some point to try to get that or whatever. Yeah.
Well, and with what resources, and then Bastien wouldn't have been there. Like it was cool that actually, you know what? Bastien didn't film that one.
Oh, okay.
That was filmed by one of the Boardman brothers. I think William Boardman. They film in London. But that's an interesting wrinkle to the question too, was that that was like after we were done, the two of us filming anyway. But anyway, that was the whole thing, and it was the only thing I think that was not filmed by Bastien. Or there was some stuff in the beginning that was in Bordeaux that wasn't with him as well. But
okay,
that wouldn't have been in the video if it didn't feel special. And you know, often I make what I make because it's what works in terms of the trip that's already happening. And that would be a good example of like, you know, obviously if I had like Red Bull Media House flying out filmers to work with me 16 days on where I could only do 3 tricks and I'd have 2 years for the project and a budget, like that would be awesome. But well, except that I wouldn't want to promote selling poison to children, but that's a different question.
Yeah.
I think I'd lose some credibility as an educator if I was telling kids to drink energy drinks in the first place.
Yeah, for sure.
A little conflict of interest there, but you know, I do what I do because it's what works the way that I do it, and it's not always how I want it to be, but I've been lucky enough to do a handful of projects on my terms and get to make stuff that feels really cool to look back on as a time.
Mm-hmm. This is just something I wanted to ask you about. This is from me, but I was reading the little Jenkem interview that went along with the part, and in that interview you mentioned that before the pandemic, you and Zoe had an idea or a project of going to study skate urbanism projects in Europe, and you mentioned in there that she had applied for grant funding at the University of Washington, I believe. Mm-hmm. And but with the pandemic happening and everything, I think you still got the funding, but basically the university didn't want to be involved anymore. And they were kind of telling you like, just do whatever you want. Like you can keep the money, but like just do this on your own. And I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that trip and like where did you go, and maybe what was maybe the most inspiring cities or places you got to check out.
Yeah, so that was. That's true, actually, and it's cool that you know about that. My wife Zoe is a landscape architect, and she's does really amazing work. She's been incredibly successful, and she'd be super embarrassed if I started listing all the great things that she's worked on. But of the two of us, she's probably the more accomplished and successful creative professional, and I'm really proud of what she's done. But at the time, Yeah, she was able to get like $10,000 of funding for researching skate urbanism initiatives in Europe from a nonprofit. So basically, we went to Malmo, Copenhagen, Lyon,
Bordeaux?
Actually, I think Zoe didn't make it to Bordeaux. I think just I did.
Okay.
Which is unfortunate because obviously in terms of its notoriety, that's been probably the most exposed skate urbanism initiative, although far from being the only one. We also went to, that was the summer they did the Long Live South Bank did the expansion of the space. So I was there for that. I got to like sit at a table and explain to people what was going on and like sell merch and go to the opening jam. We went to a big boat party.
Nice.
But what we were looking for in a lot of ways were commonalities between successful projects or kind of contraindications, things that would make a project unsuccessful. And I think what was interesting is we came in really expecting to be able to draw conclusions that would be useful to designers about the kinds of projects that work and the kinds of projects that don't, that would then be useful like for making a great project. And what we found was that the projects came to exist in such a diversity of ways that there was no way to apply that we could figure out the success of one to the success or failure of another, right? Like
there's no magic recipe, kind of.
The magic recipe is skaters, location, and hype to do it, and then finding a city government that is relatively democratic.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, for example, in Bordeaux, they have participatory budgeting, which is not a concept that you could take to the west coast of the United States and find a lot of examples of.
Mm-hmm.
Voters indicate how the budget should be spent in the city of Bordeaux. And so when an issue is popular, it gets allocated money, and then the city has to figure out how to spend the money that way. And the skateboarding initiatives are super popular, and so then suddenly they're well funded, and you can have positions like Leo, who's working as a consultant for the city, and then having all these opportunities to work on a budget, produce a festival, produce skate sculpture exchanges. And the French approach to public space is also a lot more democratic than like you would find in the United States broadly.
Mm-hmm.
Where like here, for example, you have the Civic Center skate plaza that just got created, but like that wasn't because of a democratic view of public space. That's in San Francisco where I am now, but like that wasn't created because of a sense of spatial democracy. That was created because Ocean Howell wrote about how skateboarders could gentrify plazas, and his conclusion wasn't that therefore it's a good thing. He looked at how Love Park went from being like, a decrepit place in the city center that no one wanted to be other than like homeless people and drug users who are people and matter and need places to be. But then the skaters would use the space, and because the skaters were displacing the homeless people and coexisting with them, non-skateboarder individuals would start like being like, oh, if all those like white suburban teenagers with gold chains are hanging out in the plaza, I guess I could have my lunch there,
Mm-hmm.
It made it seem more approachable than if it was a bunch of needles and tents. So the skaters then kind of opened the door for other users to come into the space, and they frankly probably annoyed a lot of the drug users and like fought with them and just generally did the work of policing for the police under the auspices of counterculture, while really, I was talking earlier about like what it's like to go as a white person and go disrespect Japanese laws. Like, great, you can bully around like homeless people is like the least cool thing about skateboarding. But then the Love Park story ends with, of course, the plaza now being used by more like upstanding members of society are now like in the space more and more. The homeless people have been functionally evicted. And then the last people to go are the skateboarders that have just operated kind of like a vaccine against homelessness. They're a temporary annoyance that wakes up the body's immune system, and then police enforcement returns and it hits a tipping point, and then the skaters get kicked out at the end. And so you have like, in America, where we have skate urbanism, it's often because of that scholarship in urbanism that they've figured out that skateboarders can be used to displace people that are considered to be a nuisance, which is like brutally inhumane. But
For sure.
You go over to Bordeaux, and it's like, they're bringing life to the city streets, and they're not like thinking, I don't know. It's just very different, and each project was incredibly different.
Yeah.
Gustav Eden, who's
Malmö.
Exactly. Have you done an episode with him?
I did, yeah, a little while back. I think his episode was number 75 or something. So it was been 2 years ago or something. A little while back.
I'll have to go back and listen to it. He's cool.
He's a very interesting. I mean, you've met him, so yeah, very interesting dude. And the Malmö story is quite interesting. Yeah.
but completely different from the Bordeaux one, because they created an association and a nonprofit, which there's the Bordeaux Skate Association as well, which is somewhat distinct from Leo, but he works with them. But in Malmö, it's like the people who wanted to build Stapelsbadparken, the really amazing like skate park that Oski skates. I mean, they created a school, but they stayed a non-profit separate from the city government. They're not working as professional consultants, and their projects are like often on temporary event permits, which is not a model that, again, you could apply everywhere else. It works there because that's how their government works, and the skaters are so coordinated. And then Lyon is more like that, where they're like non-professional. There's no like one voice of skateboarding in Lyon, but there's like Hotel de Ville is possible to skate and has been improved for skating because of incredible behind-the-scenes advocacy that doesn't get a documentary made about it, you know?
Yeah.
But in the end, it was like, well, there's really like having good flat ground, being in the city center matters. But if there weren't skaters and you built a skate plaza, it wouldn't make a skate scene happen. Mm-hmm. Or if the way the city did it didn't work, and you look at like certain plazas that have been built and they just read as like they go from being like a cool street spot to becoming the world's crappiest skate park is like an uncanny valley that you really can't get around. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to look at like what spots succeed and fail, but there's no, I think, and maybe someone else discovered the secret thing that works, but
I don't think so. I think you just synthesized it really well. Like I don't think there's one specific perfect way to do it. Like obviously it depends where you are, who the people are, all the regulation and how you can work with the city and everything. Like there's just so many parameters you need to take into account, and there's no ideal way to do it.
Yeah, and for every like rule you can create, there's an exception to that rule. Like Triangle Park in Osaka should not be a globally famous skate plaza. It's got really crappy flat ground. It's right next to the police box, which makes it illegal to skateboard there. It shouldn't be an epicenter, but it is.
Yeah.
So, but it is city center. It is, I don't know. That whole process made me think more about public process as an issue I'm interested in than necessarily like designing skateboard street furniture that's like a really cool ledge. It was like, oh, how is land managed in cities and for whom? And then what effect does that have, not just on me, but like on society in general, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, my interests deviated a little bit there and got probably lost in like laws around trespassing, and I got really interested in Scottish land rights and sort of the experience of walking in the Highlands where you're not trespassing anywhere because you're a human and you have the right to be places, which was always how I felt skateboarding, was that it opened up the door to be places that you shouldn't, or that you really, you know, you're not supposed to be there, but it's a way to access more. Like, I don't know, if you're a kid in a small town, you have nowhere to be anymore, and skateboarding was really cool because it gave you a tool to take back space in the city and say, no, like my hangout spot can be behind the grocery store or in the ditch by the highway, or I'm going to take over the school after dark and hang out with my friends there. Mm-hmm. That really responds to a big issue today, which is that like kids have nowhere to be outside in public in American cities, at least, and generally not anywhere else.
Oh, that's
you don't see
true,
kids play in the street anymore, which if the skateboard industry wants to identify like why they're not making any sales with young kids, it's like there's a way bigger issue, which is that kids are inside on iPads.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the kids who are skating are ones who have cool parents who are really involved, who take them there, which is demographically very different than like the kind of working kids whose parents, like the face of child neglect in 2000 was giving your kid a skateboard or a bike and letting them go nuts. Mm-hmm. And the face of child neglect now is giving them an iPad and keeping them inside, sedated by it. But,
yeah.
So very different kids are skating now, and the whole public sphere, like you don't see kids playing. I mean, you see stuff like the e-motorbikes are bringing back analog child fun, and people hate them. Just like they hated skateboards. I'd love to be grouchy about them, but I just like seeing teenagers do something that pisses off old people.
Okay, this next one is not a question. This is just a shout out from Matthew Bromley, founder of Blast Skates. So he said, if you can say from me a big, big thank you to him for everything he does on and off of skateboard. His skating does all the talking, and there's no need to explain how mind-blowingly incredible he is. I'm in awe of how he thinks again on and off a skateboard, and I feel extremely lucky that our paths have crossed in this cosmic bonkersness of a journey in life. Thanks to Liisa Chisholm. Keep on keeping on, old bean. Biggest of hugs, and love to you and Zoe.
Oh, that's really sweet. Well, it's nice that he can say so many kind things about me. I'm blushing. But...
I was just curious if you could tell us just about Blast, like you writing for Blast. Like how did you first meet with him? How did you hear about the brand? And what hypes you about Blast and their boards? And just tell us a little bit about that.
So I was kind of hoping you'd ask because one thing in his shout out that I wanted to somewhat debate is that so Liisa was very important in my early connection to the brand in the English side, but the first encounter I had with the brand was Daisuke Kagoshima, who's from Tokyo, Japan. I had been over there, I met Daisuke, and he's like a very 80s influenced creative skater who has a skate shop now called Golden Age, which is skateboarding and acupuncture. Kind of, we'll fix your body, we'll fix your board kind of thing, which is a crazy combo.
Skateboarding and acupuncture.
It's the two things they do.
Incredible.
Yeah, there's everything exists.
Yeah,
somewhere.
Wild.
And in his case, it exists in Harajuku, Tokyo. So, but I met Daisuke through mutual friends when I was in Tokyo at one point, and I thought he was just an absolute riot. And we had a great time and had a great session together. And then he told me about his friend Liisa, who was at the time who's really Canadian, but had lived in London for a lot of years, and she was in Osaka, and I was just kind of like, you need to go meet Liisa. You two are going to get on really well and be fast friends, and that was true, and we ran into each other and had a great session, and then there kind of precipitated a couple of years where I was really in that orbit, going to London and going around and just kind of like, I really got to meet a lot of the people involved in the brand, and I loved two things about it right away. One was that it felt really core to an approach that I could get behind. You know, at the time they're making the boards at a really small scale. They were doing it very ethically. Like, I never wanted to have my name on anything that was made really in a sweatshop by like a child who has to look at the press of the logo on the t-shirt 1,000 times. That's like not really very exciting. And Blast was currently operating at the time in like their own wood shop in the English countryside with some like, you know, sort of lefty guys doing it on like a sort of communal basis, and based in South London, which is Brixton's amazing, and all that sort of area down there rules. But I just kept having really nice experiences with people around the brand who were opening doors for me. Like, I had skated for other brands before, and it was like felt very transactional. And with Blast, it was very natural that I was just running into these people because they were where I wanted to be. And it wasn't like, yeah, we'll book you a hotel. It's like, no, come stay at my place and hang out with my family, and let's do something really like not just skate. Let's like go to the pub or go hiking or go to an art show. So it was a good place for my sort of eclecticism to land in, that it didn't feel too out of place because, you know, it's not a brand made of people who are just skaters. Their first series of boards were all made by really prominent artists like James Jarvis or people like that, and really the product of Matthew Bromley's participation in the South London creative scene of the 2010s, which was having a pretty popping moment. So it was really cool to be part of that, and then just feel like I could be part of a brand where I didn't need to limit creatively what I was doing to satisfy anyone. It's like, if I put out a really crazy ramp part, they're fine, that they think that's cool. And if I put out a street skating part in Japan, they're like, that's sick too, you know? So it became a really flexible creative platform for a lot of years to just do whatever. And they were supportive of also like the crazy shape that I wanted to make and what I was interested in skating.
That's very cool.
So, yeah, it was cool. It was really cool. I've gotten to meet a lot of great people through that brand. So it might not have been the most commercially successful business choice to go skate for a small British skate company, but yeah, fortunately I'm not in this game to make a lot of money. I'd rather just make friends and video parts, and if I can fund it through itself, that's awesome.
Well, speaking of Liisa Chisholm, she shared a couple questions for you as well. She said, if you had 3 months accommodation sorted anywhere in the world, but you had to pick up and go tomorrow, where are you most keen to explore next?
Oh, I was not ready for that question, I think. Which is funny because I've been thinking about this a lot. I'm trying to kind of plan out my year's trips right now after not having skated for almost a year. And so that's been a lot of just like, I have a little window in August where I can kind of rip off the Band-Aid, and if my surgeon said go, then start skating and filming again. And I've had no success figuring out where I want to go. There are so many places, and it's always the pressure to go back. Like, I always want to go back to places where I have friends and I know people that feel really personal to me.
Sure.
And then there's the desire to go to new places, which, like, last year I went to like South Korea, which was amazing and like such a cool experience. And then also to Bangkok with Rémi and Charlie, which was super sick too. Yeah. And it's like, I love going new places, which is why I've gone so many places, and I love seeing old friends. You know, I never turned down a trip to France, for example. That's like such an amazing time, and like, I don't know, I'd spend time on the Mediterranean, no problem, or I'd love to go back to Brazil. Japan's always easy to say that's a place I would go anytime. But one place I'd like to spend more time is Australia. I had really good times there, and it's really far away, so it didn't happen for me early, but I really liked the people that I met, and the nature there was like incredible.
Did you go kind of all over the country, or did you just go to one or a couple cities, or?
So that trip was funny because I actually went with like my mom, and because it's right-hand drive, which I have a lot of experience with from living in Japan, where I had a car, which is not super common, but it was awesome. And so I was like kind of her driver, and then helped her go hiking a lot of places. And she had no problem with me, like, you know, buzzing off and going skating in Melbourne and in Adelaide, and skating with Casey Foley or all these different guys. And then I got some time as well with my friend Nick Brown, who's a really talented skater in Sydney, which was a really funny experience because it was when they were doing the Evisen Passport collab.
Oh yeah.
That a few years ago, and so
I remember that.
I ended up Shore West, who's an amazing skater and just person and great friend in Kanazawa, Japan, one of my favorite places. Happened to be around, and he extended his trip, and we were driving around with like 5 Japanese dudes and me just speaking Japanese, drinking and eating good food, and just having a pretty unique experience of Australia in Japanese. That one was sick. Super weird, funny experience. And like, you know what, I might amend my answer to Kanazawa. That would actually be a place. I love that city. It's one of the best places in Japan, and it's not super over touristed, but the skate scene there is super unique.
Okay.
They've got a really strong DIY scene. They've got a lot of ramp skaters. They've got a lot of street skaters, and it's just a little off the beaten path, where the skaters are still interfacing with like not just the skate media, but their friends who are creative weirdos. And yeah, Kanazawa is high on the list for me, for sure.
Kanazawa.
Place I would go for 3 months.
Let's do this one. Let's see.
Ben, what made you want to go into getting a master's degree in special education, like speech pathology? I mean, maybe you told me, but I've like kind of always wondered with what you've been able to do in the past. And I guess like with that, like what would be your ideal dream job with that, or just in the future, like after skating, after grad school?
Was that Cody?
Yes, Cody Wilber, I think.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
I just watched him graduate from university this last weekend, actually.
I saw that in your stories. Yeah.
He got his master's of geology from Portland State University, so congrats to him. But,
congratulations.
Yeah, and me and Cody were roommates for a lot of years in Seattle, and collaborated creatively on a lot of things. He's a really underrated skater and influence in my life, and just a really like has an awesome approach to spots and life as well. So yeah, big love to Cody. But to answer his question, you know, I got into education a bit by mistake. I had done outdoor education, taking people on like, you know, cycling tours, camping trips, climbing mountains, hiking, whatever, stuff like that. And then, you know, was pretty jobless. I got the job teaching English in Japan, and it just kept rolling into where whenever I was skateboarding and I couldn't find something to do, I kind of did something around education. I worked for Skate Like a Girl Seattle for a lot of years, a nonprofit. Yep. And then ended up in the schools because it was so well paid. But I didn't know I wanted to be in that field, really. I mean, I did like forestry. I did every kind of like, I worked in like food service. I have a pretty crazy resume if I actually listed everything, but I'd never get hired if I did because they think I'm crazy. But I immediately fell in love with working with kids because they're so funny. And like, also, I think that I really like the problem solving aspect of it, and it's different every time. So special education, you never know what is going to be thrown at you, and there's always an institutional puzzle of like how to get the kid the resources that they need. There's almost always like pretty severe resistance against that because it's expensive to help kids with individualized resources and stuff. So I started doing it, and I guess I was pretty effective at it, and but I would just get so invested in working with like one kid or their trajectory, and it felt a lot like the learning process of figuring out a skateboard trick of like, all right, well, this kid needs to figure out how to like do X or Y skill. It's like, I like learning things. I like figuring stuff out. So that was a cool job. And then, because I don't know how to say no, I kept getting more and more involved. And then I started getting thrown more and more responsibility. But so that kind of culminated in that track with getting emergency certified as a substitute teacher and filling a 1-year teaching role in general education as a Spanish-speaking kindergarten teacher, which was a really cool opportunity that one of the schools I worked at, which was a dual immersion Japanese-Spanish dual language program, they loved me because I can talk to everybody on school grounds, which is a rare combination of languages. But yeah, they hired me to be a kindergarten teacher for a year, and it was awesome, and I loved it. But I kind of realized that I didn't want to become a teacher eventually in the classroom sense, and that I was really more interested in special education and disability rights and those sort of things.
Okay.
And so I looked around at the sort of different professions that I thought I was very familiar with at this point, years into working around education. And it's like speech and language pathology checked a lot of boxes. Like I love languages, I love problem solving. Yeah, the questions it asks were just really interesting to me. So, I got married and realized that it was probably time for a little bit more of a stable career pivot. I'm in my 30s now. I'm 33 years old. So, yeah, I started applying for programs and I got in, and things started happening pretty fast from there. But yeah, I love the work. It's really, really fun, and it's very humbling to come back from a skate trip where people are acting like you're some like big deal guy, and then some 4-year-old or like maybe like a 5-year-old wearing a Minecraft t-shirt like calls you lame and kicks you in the shins is like a pretty good reminder.
Yeah, call back to reality.
It's like you're not like a big deal.
yeah, not to everybody at least.
Yeah, the things that would make you special would be being a nice person and being funny or like helpful, which is true. That's more important in life than most things you could do on a skateboard. And skateboarding is the best, and it's super fun, and I love it, but it's cool to be tied to other things that make you realize maybe if I didn't land the switch heel, I don't need to break my board. It's okay. Like there are big problems and there are small problems, and not landing a skateboard trick is a pretty small problem.
And I was wondering if you could just tell me a little bit about getting because I saw on Instagram that you got I don't know if it's like a funding of some sort through CSEF for that program that I believe you're still doing that, right? Are you finishing that right now?
I have one more year. I'm going to be doing clinical work over the summer, and then one more year in the program, and then I'm done, which is pretty exciting to me. 3 years of grad school in my 30s is a lot. So
congrats on doing that, because it's at any age it's not easy, but especially in your mid 30s it's
well, it's not easy, and it is too. When I was an undergraduate, I graduated at 20, and it's funny to go back and be in the same situation, and you're like, okay, I guess I did grow up a lot since then. Things that I found really hard at 20 that I wasn't ready for socially, emotionally, academically, whatever. Like, oh shoot, it's actually not that hard to make a calendar and keep to the schedule, and all that stuff actually is a lot easier so I don't know, maybe for people who struggled in undergraduate, this is an opportunity to reflect on that it doesn't get easier because life gets more complicated, but it does get easier because you learn and grow. So
I believe your mom also worked, I don't know, in speech pathology, right? At some point in your life? Did I get that right?
For her whole career,
Was she I assume you must have talked about it with her and stuff, but since you didn't decide to take that path since the very beginning after you graduated high school, like you eventually came to it, but I was just curious about like how influential she was in that decision, kind of.
She was what I'll say is she was right. And it's funny because I think as like a 20-year-old man, I wasn't just like super excited to go do my mom's career.
Makes sense.
If anything, it made me a little resistant to the idea at first, but over the years, like, she was a super helpful influence in like finding my place in education as a career and like learning how to be effective. And it made us a lot closer because if I had a hard day, she was someone I could call and just say like, this happened. And she'd say, well, you know, ed code dictates this, so that shouldn't have really occurred. And then you know how to follow up with it and make sure that the same things that are happening in the classroom don't keep going on. And I guess in that way, like, she did become like a really useful mentor for me, but also someone to whom became a lot closer, because not a lot of men in their mid-20s are calling their mom to discuss work as often as I ended up being. But she was super effective in her career. She's now retired, and congrats to her because she did a lot of really impactful things. But yeah, she lived a life of service in her career, and she made the world a better place, and she still does in different ways. But I didn't want to do exactly her job, and I fought it for a long time, and then just kind of realized, no, you're right. This is awesome.
This is actually really great, yeah.
There are ways in which we're similar that make me good at this, that also made you good at this. So.
All right, let's do, I have two last ones. This one is from Dane Ichimura.
Yeah, good friend of mine.
So let's see, he said, are there more wheels in the world or more doors in the world? Very philosophical question right there.
Yeah, we were just debating this, and I feel like that's the... Thanks, Dane. I really appreciate that. You're setting me up for success here. So, Quentin, what do you think? Do you think there are more doors or more wheels in the universe?
Well, since wheels are smaller, I would probably assume more wheels, but there's definitely a lot of doors, and yeah, but then what is a door? What is a wheel? When do you characterize it as such? Yeah, that's also a debate.
And we just became a philosophy podcast. To provide the viewers with something to argue with me about in my DMs, I originally thought it was doors because I think there's a lot of kinds of things that can be called a door, like any opening that closes.
Yeah.
So a lot of like biological systems contain things like doors, like every cell has something like a door in it. They open and close to allow like more chemicals in. But, you know, if a wheel is defined not by its use, but by its form, even if biological life contains a lot of doors and there's a lot of like cave forms, there's so much space in the universe for donut-shaped objects to exist in. I'm going to say it's wheels. Yeah, we really thought about that one.
Yeah, that's funny. Damn, okay.
Glad you saved it for the end so the people who really aren't clicking away. This is actually a podcast for sleep now. That's how a lot of people listen to them. So anyone listening to this while driving is going to cause a real disaster, though.
Dane also asked, what is your favorite memory from yours and Zoe's wedding?
Oh, man. Well, the whole thing was really amazing. I think it went from being a sleep podcast to a corny podcast. I didn't really think that like the trope that your wedding is the best day of your life would really hold up. And for me, that it really was.
It was a year ago, right? I think you just shared it was about a year ago, like a few days ago. You celebrated the first anniversary. Yeah,
June the 14th. So we just passed it. But I think the best thing was just seeing people from all over my eclectic, crazy life and Zoe's, life come together and like hang out and get along. As someone who's always had really different friend groups, like, it's always been stressful for me to invite people together and know that the big personalities might clash as much as they get along. And usually that fear is not well placed. People are cool. But it was really amazing to see friends and family come together. We did it on Orcas Island, which is a really important place in me and Zoe's relationship. So like 11 years ago, going way back to when me and Zoe met over that summer before I moved to Japan and Zoe went back to New York. At the end of the summer, I took her on a bicycling tour of the San Juan Islands. We're just camping and biking around. And that was the place where we like decided to keep going. So in a way, it was the first place we committed to one another. And every year since then, we've gone back to the San Juan Islands and done another bicycle tour similar to the first one. So, on the 10th annual one, I asked her to marry me. And on the 11th one, we brought 100 of our closest friends and family.
Wow. Amazing,
and, and we just did another one like a week or two ago. which was really special to keep the tradition alive even when we're living here in California. And life's really different, but it's one thing that's always the same in a special place. So
we can wrap it up with this last question from Zoe. Of course, I needed a question from her.
Of course. Thanks.
So she said, do you have any hopes for how your relationship to skateboarding may evolve as you get older?
Oh, that's a heavy hitter. I wish she'd asked me about doors and wheels or something. That's a little less heady. No, I don't know. It's funny because with her for years, I've been saying that every year is the last year I'm going to get to do it the way that I've been doing it. And I've been wrong every time. And it's always grown in some new way. And I've definitely felt like my body change. I'm, in my 30s and I've lived pretty hard in terms of just like sleeping on the floor, eating the cheapest imaginable food, like skating every day as treating skating like it's an endurance sport is not a path to longevity as much as I, stretch and take care of myself. But, I'm working on a video part now with Brett Nichols, who does Pathways. Super.
Oh, cool.
Super excited to work with him, and I think that the big change is that I'm not as interested in making social media content anymore. I think at a point for me, social media started out like it was like adopting a kitten, and it's really cute and it lives in your house, and as it grows up you start noticing it's taking on other characteristics, but you keep it around because it's your pet cat, and by the end of it, you're like, oh, that's not it wasn't going to become a house cat. It's a tiger that now lives in my house. And keeping the tiger around takes all of my resources. It takes all of my time. It's super invasive to my space. It destroyed, what it was when I started doing it in my life and what it became in the end were really different. Yeah. So I use it to communicate. It's a really valuable tool, but I also look at the ways that it's changed, society and the world, and they're not positive.
Yeah,
sure. I think that at a certain level, the people who are making really engaging content, like I'm the carrot that they dangle to get you to look through 1,000 ads for stuff you don't need or political slogans or, you know what I mean? Like if there was no one making interesting, cool content on social media, would people still use it? Yeah, because they're addicted to it, but it would, for me, it's become less interesting. I'm not, the most creative people I'm following aren't online in that way anymore.
Yeah.
And some of them are. Some of them have a professional interest in it, or they're in a milieu that it's more engaging, and I still love seeing that content, but overall, it's just I'm older, and with AI, a lot of the stuff on my feed is really gnarly now. I don't think it makes me more effective, so I'd really like to start focusing more completely on making independent projects and focusing on getting them in front of the correct eyes as opposed to getting them in front of as many eyes as possible.
Yeah.
And so working on projects with Brett or I've gotten to do so many bucket list skate video things. I had a part in the sequel to Overground Broadcasting, Beyond the Broadcastings I don't think that many people saw it, but for me, it's the thing that I would show my grandkids because, I got to be inspired by Overground and then go back and really did have the experience of someone pulling out a VX from behind the counter at the skate shop the first day I walked in and saying, let's go, just pointing at a time, and we met up and we filmed, and that became a part. That means more to me than having a bunch of Instagram followers. And
yeah,
I appreciate people who watch what I do and take interest in it. But now as I don't have as much time to dedicate to doing it and my body doesn't work the same way and life changes, it's the things that I really want to take with me are the video parts I've made or more projects like Monstro that let me do something that I haven't already done or say something I haven't already said that someone else hasn't said.
And when is that? When is it supposed to come out? Or do you have a deadline or not yet at this point?
So fortunately for me, he works on videos for a really long time. So it's been funny because I moved down here in Oakland where I'm living, and I've been here now for a year or almost 2 years. And we started filming. My knee degenerated rapidly. I got surgery, and that whole time, of course, I'm driving by skate spots and having ideas and writing down a list so I don't go crazy. And it's I was like, Brett, you know, you don't have to like wait for me. You can put. He's like, I'm not putting it out anytime soon.
Okay, yeah,
you
good.
can heal up, and we'll still film stuff after.
We'll have plenty of time after. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's a working professional who is unbelievably dedicated to skateboarding media. He works so hard on his videos, and they're so cool because of his obsessive cataloging of architecture in addition to everything else. Even the B-roll footage in his videos is pretty much all from him, which is, yeah, it's crazy to work with someone who's like as crazy as me about stuff. It feels really good to work with him because it makes me feel sane or equally crazy, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And that creative friction between the two of us, I think, also has helped us make something pretty special. So I'm really excited to share it, but it's not going to come out in a hurry so much as we want to get it right. And there's so many people in the video. I'm sure there's people whose parts have been done and for a long time, but I think like a lot of people, he's claimed it's his last. I don't know if that'll be true because the people who have something to say and they really need to get it out, they tend to come back when they realize there's something new to say. So
yeah, exactly.
I hope selfishly, I hope it's not his last video, and I'd love to be in future ones, but he's done so many. He's worked so hard. He's so amazing at what he does. So yeah, but
that's a cool project. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. But it's good that you guys don't have like you're taking your time, and whenever he feels like it's all come together, then he can release it. But not rushing into it.
It's easily the longest I've ever worked on a video as well, which is something worthwhile to say because most of the video parts I've filmed or the segments have happened in a really short time period.
Yeah.
I think How I Skate lends itself well to short time spans and trip videos, and which is awesome. But like, for example, my San Diego Bones part, I think I filmed it in 18 days. I skated every day. My goal when I was filming it, like I was sleeping in a car like half the time, and I would try to film 5 tricks a day, every single day.
Holy shit.
Which was gnarly. And then also just like Chase Cruz, who worked on that with me, was like down to keep up that pace, which was really insane. But like I've made a lot of the stuff I've made at that time scale, and like working with Bastien on the Film Trucks video, that was like a 3-month process.
Right? Oh, 3 months, okay.
Well, but so it wasn't distributed evenly. Like it was a few weeks of cumulative filming time,
right? And
it would happen in little bursts throughout the summer. But like realistically, like maybe 20 days, with the camera on and present, that you have to make. I think the part's like 5 minutes. So I mean, it's cool as a travel log. I also like. I've been trying to be a more aggressive editor now that I've like made enough skate videos that I know that volume isn't better. I think he did a good job of keeping it to something pretty concise, but yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to try to make that one great video part, I guess, that we're all chasing.
For sure, yeah. No, it's going to be interesting to see, and interesting for you to, I mean, it is, well, not right now since you've been injured and you can't skate yet, but once you get back into skating, it's going to be interesting to piece that whole part together and approach it with a lot more time on your hands. Well,
and something funny about working with Brett is like he's so spot-centric and he's so willing to work for it. So, you know, there's a real temptation as a skateboarder to want to like be very trick focused and like find the spots that let you do the tricks that you want to do. And I think part of why he likes working with me is that if he takes me to the most like absurd modern sculpture, there's a pretty good chance I'll try to skate it anyway. But it is funny, like the part of me that wants to do more complicated skate tricks that require simpler or easier terrain, it's like he's been really pushing me away from that and into like really being spot driven, which I think gives the footage we filmed together more coherence than the previous projects I've worked on, where it's very eclectic usually.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm excited for that one to come out. And if you're listening, Brett, thanks for pushing me to make cool stuff with you. It's been a real pleasure.
Okay, well, yeah, let's wrap it up here. Thank you so much, Ben.
Yeah, well, thank you for making the time and being patient coordinating this. I know it's taken about a year to get me on board. And
yeah, no worries. It was all worth the wait for sure. So thank you.
That's it for my conversation with Ben. Follow him on Instagram @RollerSurfer. Keep an eye out for this Brett Nichols video project coming soon, hopefully. And in the meantime, make sure to go watch and rewatch all of Ben's amazing video parts from the last 15 years. Thank you for tuning in. See you soon for a new episode of Beyond Board.